Is this episode 5?
I think this is technically episode 5. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Hey, welcome.
Welcome back.
Welcome
I'm John.
back. I'm Matt.
And this is the... We still don't have a name yet, but we'll come up with an intro before we release these and come up with a name. So, this is our 5th episode. Do you want to go over the ones that we did before briefly? Or do you think we need to do that?
The other episode?
Doesn't matter.
No, I mean, we're going to get to the point where it's 4 hours.
No, I think we should do
like the Old Testament.
We should do a recap of every single episode we've done up to the new one that we're doing every time.
So, yeah, last week we did... Let's do this. Last week we did Lethal
Perfect.
Weapon, Rush Hour, and 48 Hours. So those buddy cop movies. This week we are doing Coen Brothers movies, but these are unique Coen Brothers movies in the regard that they are the character study, or at least the paramount character study Coen Brothers movies, according to us. You could throw in basically any of their movies because they're all character studies.
But these are the most specifically character study films, where the other ones have a lot more going on in terms of plot.
I would agree with that. And genre specifically.
Yeah, exactly.
Like The Man Who Wasn't There, you could say that's more of a noir, even though it's also a character study. But
and then you have Fargo's like a crime film.
Right.
Thriller, mystery.
Kind of Western, but in Minnesota.
Yeah, where these do fit some of those elements, but again, this one is like real tight on the individual specific characters that it follows.
Yes, yeah. We're almost,
which are...
Yeah, so the movies are Inside Llewyn Davis, A Serious Man, and
Barton Fink.
That's right.
Yeah. So with that, what's our first kind of topic? Why we pick the movies, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean...
Did we kind of already start going
a little bit. Like, they're great because... I mean, okay, dude, if you could, like... I feel like all the other movies we just mentioned, like the Coen Brothers movies specifically, like, you could kind of give, like, a rough plot of all of the other movies, I think. I think with these, if I told you to give me, like, a brief plot of any of these, maybe with the exception of Barton Fink, but still, there's just so much going on that, like...
Well, a couple of them have a pretty simple synopsis, I guess, if you wanted to lay it out in that way, but they're about so much more than that.
Yes, exactly. Like, A Serious Man, if I had to sum that movie up, I'd be like, a bunch of horrible shit happens to a Jewish guy in the 60s, like Barton Fink.
That's the most loose plot synopsis that you could give. I think out of the 3. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, the other two...
Llewyn is probably the second, and I think Barton Fink is the clearest in terms of, like, the character has to do this thing by this time, or else.
Yeah, and by virtue of that, Llewyn Davis and Barton Fink also have more kind of succinct character arcs, I would say. Yeah. And I guess we can get into that a little bit later as to why.
I hadn't ever considered that part of it, but
we'll talk about it. If we remember, should put a pin in that.
Yeah, I agree. Okay.
Anyhow, can we get a 2-minute warning, by the way, whenever...
So, character arcs, we'll put a pin in that. But yeah, either way. Okay, so we picked these because they're the character study movies. They're all dark comedies. Some of them a little bit funnier than others, but, like, these are... I don't know. I think they're, like, almost the most contained, even though they don't have genre. It's, like, because you're just following one character. Like, none of these movies have scenes that don't have these characters in them.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So...
For the most part, pretty much.
Yeah, maybe, like, a couple sequences don't involve directly, like, Larry
Serious
Gopnik.
Man. Yeah, Gopnik isn't in every sequence, but he's directly connected to every sequence without question.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So we're going to go through these... Not chronologically in the time they were made, but chronologically in the time they're set. So we're going to start with Barton Fink. We're going to...
Barton Fink is 1941 in its setting.
Yep. Inside Llewyn Davis, 1961 is going to be the second one, and then...
We think late 60s for...
A Serious Man.
They never... It's never on the screen what year it is, which they do in the other 2 movies tell what year it is. Mm-hmm. In this one, just based on kind of when some of the music came out that they were listening to in the film... We glean that it's late 60s.
Right.
We think maybe 69. I don't know. Mm-hmm. Doesn't matter.
It feels like that with, like, Jefferson Airplane and, like, there's, like, a Jimi Hendrix song that is, I think, from, like, the late 60s. It's in it.
One of the Santana albums is not featured, but discussed.
Yeah. It's a subplot.
Yeah, it definitely is, yeah. So, do you want to talk about what, like, your first interaction with these movies was?
Yeah. So, okay, Barton Fink... Actually, do you want to, at the top of each movie. Do you want to talk about that and then use that to dive into the movie?
Sure, that's great. Yeah.
Okay,
We
cool.
can do that. So do you want to just go off with Barton
Barton
Fink,
Fink.
and then we can remember to do that with the other two as we intro those other two movies?
Yeah, that sounds
Yeah,
good.
that's fine.
Yeah, so Barton Fink was like one of the most formative movies for me ever. Like, I think it's one of the movies that I ever watched for the first time. I was probably 16.
What year was it?
2009.
Nine?
Yeah, 2009. It was when
Yeah.
it came out. I remember. Or sorry, I was
After it
thinking
came
it was
out.
when around when A Serious Man came out.
Yeah,
was
okay.
when I saw it. Maybe a little bit earlier, even. Anyway, I was definitely in my mid-teens and like,
Mid-teens when you started getting into film too.
yeah, and well,
More
this,
serious.
This movie was like one of the ones
Yeah.
that I think like I had seen. You know, it was probably like 2007, 2008 because I had seen the There Will Be Blood trailer and I was like, whoa, like what the hell are
okay,
films?
so-
You know, and then
you were introduced to the Coens too.
yes, exactly, right around that time. And this really, I think this might have been the first Coen movie I ever watched where I was like, I got what Coen Brothers movies were. And it was a big one to start with, for sure, because it's one of the most substantial, I think. I mean, these three movies are all very, very, very substantial, but Barton Fink is just, I mean, not only is the form so directly, like, influential in terms of, like, the way you want to make the movie, but make movies or write movies. But
I was going to say influential to you as a writer
Exactly.
and director. Like,
yeah, just the fact that you can, like, use murder elements.
the movie's about a writer.
Yes, right. And then, yeah, so it's on a form level, but also on a content level.
Yeah.
Even though it clearly is just, like, showing how awful Hollywood can be and how punishing it can be for,
Yeah.
like, creatives, it was still just, like, watching a writer go through writer's block. And, you know, I don't want to get to use Jack Lipnick's language, too fruity about my analysis. But, like,
Yeah.
that side of, like, whoa, you can be poetic, but also attach that poetry to like real stakes in a movie. It had every element pretty much. So yeah, Barton Fink. I mean, that plus I think this movie has pound for pound some of the best dialogue scenes I've ever seen on the screen. Like I think dialogue from the stance of the writing is perfect, the setting is perfect, and the two characters are perfect with John Goodman and Turturro in this.
From my perspective,
Yeah.
my first interaction with this movie was really it was seeing this cover, this like almost, well, that's the film poster, but
Yeah.
his face on the VHS cover.
Yeah.
In like the mid to late 90s, back when we would go to Video Scene in Delaware,
Yeah.
go to the video store, and you would kind of pick the movies that you didn't know,
Yeah.
based on what the box art looked like, right? So my first interaction with this, I remember specifically always thinking, what is this movie, Barton Fink?
Yes.
I'd read the back, I'd be like, this looks kind of interesting. I wasn't as familiar with the Coens in the late 90s as I became. I mean, you know, I grew up with Raising Arizona, but I didn't really equate that to being a Coen film. I just knew of the movie.
Yeah, and at the time, really, it was probably like Fargo and Raising Arizona.
Yeah.
Where they're two like big
Yeah.
movies, right?
Oh, yeah.
Was there anything else?
Wait, Fargo and Raising Arizona? I mean, yeah, this was after Lebowski, too, because Lebowski was, what, 96?
98.
98, so
Yeah.
probably around, or maybe prior to the time that Lebowski came out.
Right.
Anyway, so that was kind of my first interaction with just the knowledge of this movie existing.
Yeah.
And this is also me at about 16 years old. I was,
Right.
well, 14, you know, around that age.
Yeah, maybe.
Mid-teens, when I started getting into film. But I never pulled it off the shelf and rented it. ever,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
And I tried to watch it years ago. And kind of just like watched it passively, and this is not a movie that you can watch passively.
No,
There's a lot
really.
going on with it.
Yeah.
So I finally, for the first time ever, watched this movie yesterday.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's tough.
So it's
man.
fresh in my mind, and this is,
Yeah.
I guess we can talk about this now, and we'll go into similarities in other ways later.
Yeah.
But all three of these movies are very rewatchable, and they're rewatchable for a reason. It's because they require
They
a rewatch,
demand it, yeah.
and probably more than one. I mean, I'm seeing that with, I've seen A Serious Man. I mean, I bought that on iTunes when it came out in 2009.
Yeah.
And I've watched it for years.
Yeah.
A bunch of times, and now looking at things a little more analytically for the show,
Right.
it goes to like how Barton Fink is. I think I'm going to be watching this movie for the next decade,
Oh, dude.
trying to figure out what it's about.
Absolutely.
Or
I mean,
just like
that's
how
the-
I feel about it, and
Those-
that's going to
and-
evolve with every watch.
Right, you'll
Yeah.
project whatever's going on, and that's what's so great about these.
Yeah.
There's just so much gold in the hills
Yeah.
because like when Woody Allen saw 2001: A Space Odyssey for the first time, he said that like he watched it and he was just like, all right, this sucks. Like he really didn't like it at all. He watched it a second time. Like,
I felt that way about There Will Be Blood.
Oh my gosh,
know,
dude!
like, when I first
all
saw
of
it,
these
right?
movies that make you ask more questions than answers they give. It's like that's when you know you found something special.
So that's my first interaction with this movie specifically.
Yeah. But asking questions in a good way, obviously. But anyway, yeah, I agree, man. It's like these movies, you just know. And we've also gotten to the point of maturity where we kind of know, like, all right, this is one that I know that if I watch it again, it's going to give me something different, right?
Yeah, and you know that with some movies, and I mean, every movie's got its shelf life in terms of rewatchability.
Yeah.
I mean, I hit my limit with tons of movies.
Right.
But I just, it's kind of cool seeing this for the first time, and it's such a great film that I'm just scratching the surface of what I'm going to experience with this movie for years to come.
And it's so,
but I'm already in that realm with the other
Yes, you've already reached
movies.
that part of the evolution of your
Yeah.
experience with. But that's what's so cool about these two is like there's some movies that demand a rewatch that they demand a rewatch because of the big twist. You know, The Sixth Sense, which I like as a movie. Fight Club, same thing. I also like as a movie. But I think you can basically get everything out of Fight Club on the first viewing. And then, of course, you go back and you appreciate it more because of the twist. But you don't think of those as, like, rewatchable.
No, I almost disliked the movie more the second time, Fight Club,
right.
the second time I saw it because I didn't have that fresh perspective.
Exactly.
Now, that being said, we're going to talk about endings later. But I will really quickly say that this does have a twist.
Yeah, sure.
Barton Fink has a twist at the end, for sure.
It is a couple of twists/plot turns, I think.
I would say.
Fair. Okay.
Yeah. I wrote Shyamalan twist as I was making notes.
Okay.
And this is, again, first view. Well, hopefully I can expound upon it when we talk about endings. But I'd say there's a pretty big twist at the end.
All right, cool.
Not that it wasn't foreshadowed. There's a lot that kind of is laid out to make you ready for what that twist is. But
that's fair.
I'd say there's a twist.
Okay, so my notes are like in no particular order. Like we said on this podcast before, we're not really going to give synopses. Just watch these movies if you haven't seen them. And if you don't watch them and you listen to this, that's fine too. I don't really care. But watch them.
Yeah, I don't care what you do. But you should watch them.
Yeah.
I would.
Because they're damn near they're not damn near perfect. They are perfect movies in my opinion. So
in a lot of aspects.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess when you say perfect, that's all encompassing, but
it is.
Yeah.
So with me, first thing I wrote, because I feel like this is one of those the movie clearly has a lot of little references to the Bible and like Barton's on the 6th floor of the hotel, all that stuff. I've heard a million times that the Hotel Earl where he's staying is hell. Yeah, what do you think about that?
As after a first watch, I think it was very obvious to me that it was hell.
Sure.
Now, so going into this movie and kind of... Yeah. All right, so...
Yeah.
Fuck, I kind of lost my train of thought.
No. Going into this movie... You thought, like, okay, you watched it, and you were like, wow, this seems like it's probably hell.
From a first watch, looking at the way the hotel is introduced, lets you know that the hotel is an entity unto itself. Almost kind of like, what's the hotel in The Shining?
The Overlook.
The Overlook. Yeah. It has an Overlook type of vibe. And also, when he signs into the hotel for the first time, when he signs into the hotel, and the shot that they show from above of the sign-in book turning.
Yeah, it's like an overhead.
Overhead with a zoom in and the book turning, right? And I think the camera might also kind of follow a little bit of an angle.
It might. I don't recall.
Either way, it reminded me of Jumanji, of all things.
Ah.
And the way that the mystical, kind of the mysticism surrounding the game, the board game.
Yes.
And I was like, holy shit. And I don't know if Jumanji came out around the same time. I don't know if they were influenched by that shot. I don't know if there were other shots in other films before that. But that's immediately where my mind went. Yeah. And I knew as soon as he entered the hotel, like, Chet's kind of a goofy guy, but then they go into this thing where you're like, there's something magical going on with this. Yeah. Magical is not a good way to put it, but my first impression was that there was something magical going on with the hotel.
Yeah, the movie is clearly not just in Barton's head. I actually...
No.
Well, sorry. From his point of view, I mean. Some of it, yes, you can make the argument that it's in his head, literally. I mean, there are like a billion references to heads and losing them in this movie. But yes, there's that shot. And also, like, when he goes to L.A., even just it dissolves into the shot of the... which is one of the last shots of the movie. that massive rock on the beach and the water splashing up against it.
Which
I
keeps
think
coming back.
Yes, and I think that actually adds. Just again to build on your case for that. Just something to the atmosphere of like I don't know what it is, but there's something that I remember always just
That's
being so
drawing him in.
unsettling.
It's almost
about
like
that
he's
shot.
like destined to go there.
Yes, yeah, it feels like it's been waiting for him. I think that's what that shot feels like to me. And then I agree. I mean, even Steve Buscemi coming up from underground. I mean, that's part of the argument that I've always.
What
heard
about
people
the
say.
bell ring
It's hell.
and it like
lasts for forever?
Yeah, until Buscemi.
I think that's just a Coen-y, like, ooh, it's going to be unsettling
Well,
touch. You know?
also to that point, I mean, I don't know how much we're going to talk about sound, but the sound in this one, the sound design is so good. Excuse me. It goes from like real quiet, real relaxed, nothing going on, to like loud bangs, like just, or even like character noises, or even the sound of the mosquito.
Yes.
It goes from really quiet to a very important noise happening.
Yes.
And a lot of it kind of punches you in the face. Even the mosquito does. I mean, you know that he's in the room, and that's the focus.
Invading
Yeah,
his area. Yeah.
And then kind of, for me, I guess a last point on the hotel, not a last point, but another thing that I noticed as the hotel was introed and you're like, this is creepy, you almost think it turns into like a... You're like, is this a ghost movie? Because
yes.
Okay, so I don't like to go into movies knowing anything. I didn't watch a trailer. I didn't read a synopsis. I knew absolutely nothing going into this movie, other than watching it years ago. I mean, I don't remember. Like I said, I read the back of the jacket of the video cover, but
yeah,
I don't remember that. That was such a long time ago. And then, like I said, years ago, I did try to watch the movie and kind of passively watched it. And I remember that something going on with a murder mystery in a hotel, but kind of forgot about it entirely.
Yeah.
And going into it, watching it this time, I kind of didn't have any idea what to expect. I just was completely blank on the movie as far as like an expectation.
Yes.
And when the wallpaper started peeling off of the... to equate it to another movie, it almost kind of reminded me of a scene that might happen in Pan's Labyrinth. Like before you start to realize the whole fairy tale thing is going on, where you're like, this is the real world, and now there's something else weird going on here. Right. And when the wallpaper starts to peel off, you kind of at first think that it's like there's something creepy going on with the hotel, because you already got that vibe.
Right.
But then it's kind of explained away and things become like realistic and practical, because it's the middle of summer, there's no air conditioning in there, they're in Los Angeles, and it's an old hotel and wallpaper is just kind of falling off the wall. So you kind of, it brings you back to reality, and you're like, maybe this movie isn't mystical.
That's why this movie's so great, is it balances, it doesn't, and I know Pan's Labyrinth is a very different movie, but a movie like this, if it did that, would be jumping the shark. You know what I mean? Like, for me, if it tried to... It would just be a different movie.
But it seemed like it was going in that direction in certain scenes.
Because
again, this is a fresh watch. I've had no context. These are first opinions. This isn't even a thought that I had like after I continued to watch the movie. I'm thinking back to like the very first time.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I was going to say Walter. I was thinking Moldowski. Even John Goodman's character. Yeah, like Goodman's character, you know, lighting the place on fire and going into his room. And it's like clearly... that surreal element, those little surreal elements of the peeling of the wall, or like Chet coming up from underground, or the utter isolation. There are 5 people you see in the hotel the whole movie.
Oh yeah, it's
there's Eddie Arcadian from The Last
You
Dragon.
recognize that?
Yes.
I do. I noticed that at the end. I don't know the actor's name.
It's the 2 detectives.
Yeah, they're really good in that.
They are great.
Yeah. I was gonna quiz you on that and see if you noticed it.
I was wrong. It's 6 because there's the elevator operator also. So it's Buscemi, Barton, Charlie Meadows, the 2 detectives, and the elevator operator. So, but other than that, the movie does a great job of
There's one other person
in the hotel. Mm-hmm. Oh,
she's very important.
It's Judy Davis.
Right. Pretty much not the only female in the entire movie. No, there's the
he's dancing with somebody toward the end, but
and there's the man and woman at the very beginning that are talking about the review of this play.
Yeah. But the movie,
she's the prominent
character. To add to the kind of supernatural vibe of it, like it shows a very empty hotel, and obviously you only see a few characters there, but those like tracking shots, in those tracking shots, you see all the shoes outside the rooms. So you know there are people in those rooms. But I think that adds
outside of every room.
Outside of every room, so it adds to the uneasiness of knowing it is a fully, you know, it looks like it's at full
fully
capacity.
functioning hotel.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But Barton is, you know, feels that isolated to where like.
What
you have all
about
these-
the couple having sex in the other room?
Mm-hmm.
He and Goodman hear them, and they even bring it up. So that's another. I don't know how that plays into or how it matters. I'm sure it matters because everying matters. In their writing.
I think it plays into Charlie. I mean, Charlie brings up Goodman. I know you know this.
I forgot, but it's okay.
Well, he brings up like having a billion opportunities as a
door-to-door
salesman, insurance,
a traveling
guy.
insurance.
Yeah, he has like the tie with the the pinup girl.
Yeah.
And then Barton clearly, when Barton is asked by Charlie, like, do you have a sweetheart? Barton clearly is like a sexually like frustrated / you know what I mean? Like, so I think it's to play to their.
Well, sexuality is
envy,
questioned
maybe.
like a few times in the movie too, because he's like.
Because he's fruity.
He's an intellectual
he's
type.
A writer,
and, exactly.
and he's Jewish, which a lot of characters in the movie remind him. It's the 40s, so even the detectives mention the place not being restricted. So, like, I think
that comes
that
into
is
play
part of
in
making him
A Serious
different.
Man too.
Yes, totally, it does. But yeah,
he's just different.
Does...
So people automatically, I guess, at that time were like, "Oh, you're different. You're gay."
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Yeah, or like all the more reason that you might be queer. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
So. But anyway, no, I think the movie does a great job of balancing the supernatural, literally, and kind of like peppering that stuff literally peppering that stuff up until the end of the movie when it finally, the surreal does actually meet face to face with the real.
And we can talk about that when we talk about endings. But I'm just gonna say now, I had from a first. Time viewer, man, I gotta watch that movie again. I kind of got what was going on, but I didn't get why they were doing it.
Yes,
I'll just say that.
Yes, yeah, it gets.
And I think I need to figure out why they were doing it, and I have no idea after a first watch.
Have you seen the movie Adaptation?
No.
It reminded me a little bit of the. Adriana made me watch it. It's great. She didn't make me, but suggested it, and we watched it. And
she made you watch it.
But it's similar to where like it has these small, like Barton Fink does have the murder mystery element, you know, which of course comes into play later. But the fact that, and again, this is the Coens just being so good at using genre as that little jumping off point, and really using that as something that really just kind of keeps you interested in the movie. Of course, they use it wisely in a way that plays with the plot and his relationship with John Goodman, but it adds some vinegar to it. Like, it zhuzhes it up. And the movie didn't require
From a
that.
plot standpoint, sure.
Right. Didn't require
I think what really keeps it going is the dialogue and the humor.
Oh, of course. And Barton's total, his writer's block and that expectation / ticking clock of that first meeting with Michael Lerner's character.
Yeah, there is a ticking clock.
Right. Lipnick, yeah. So yeah, I think that all gives it like a nice little function, but the murder in the middle, it ups the stakes to where there's that perfect, just complete stress factory of a scene when he goes to Lipnick's pool and like the murder has just happened. Charlie's leaving, so Barton knows he's going to be all alone. He has nothing. Like it's one of the lowest moments in the movie.
How does the guy even keep it together at that point, especially coming off of a murder scene? Which he's implicated in, like the girl dies in his bed and he wakes up and she's dead. You've seen that in other movies, but in this one it's treated like as a plot device to kind of, like you just said, it kind of creates a perfect storm for Barton because what's really important is his writing, and that's what's going on. And then he's got writer's block already, and then a dead girl ends up in his bed, and he just like
So that's just so much of
it piles on top of his stress as a writer.
Exactly, which is
and that's what the movie
it's playing second fiddle to, to
even,
the other.
Even though in real life
problem.
a murder would be way more important than a guy
writing a Wally Beery wrestling picture.
He's writing a wrestling movie. All he has to do is like have a love interest and a little bit of intrigue and drama and a lot of action.
Yeah,
and he's just such a. How would you describe him as a writer? Like in terms of, he's a playwright. He's a well-to-do or well-known and just coming off of a great success of a play, which I don't remember the name of. But
Bare Ruined Choirs is the name of the play, and I'm glad you asked what I thought of him as a writer because I just want to talk about Barton as a character. Like, I think one of the best character intros. It's not like the moment you see him type of intro, but like one of the best, like one of the most revealing character things I've ever seen in a movie is. It's early in the movie. Barton is meeting with the producer of his successful play for dinner with those two the two yuppies. They probably weren't called yuppies at the time, but anyway,
They were like normal New York squares.
Yeah,
I guess.
yeah.
I don't know what you. Yeah, in 1941 too. That's kind of weird. We don't know the.
I have no idea what the landscape was. Like some kind of transcendental, or not transcendental.
They'd be yuppies now.
Transatlantic. Anyway, but yeah, clearly people who are of the higher class. And Barton, he wants to be a spokesman for the common man.
The fishmonger is the lead role in his play.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
Or it's about fishmongers, I guess. So which I want to get into that. I have a whole thing. I'll tie a bow on it. So sure.
Anyway, so Barton, he's meeting with those people, and he is trying to be like, he's trying not to connect with them, and he's like, you can tell he's reserved with them, and he even tries to be, he's falsely being humble when the producer is like, here's the review, it's in the Herald, blah, 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 and Barton's like, oh, they'll be wrapping fish in it in the morning. So he's trying to seem really humble, but then he gets the call to meet with his agent.
I noticed this too.
Yeah, okay, cool. He gets the call to meet with his agent, and the agent is like, did you see what the Herald said?
No, his agent's at the bar.
Yeah.
He's at the same, he's at a table.
Place. Sure. So anyway, 20 seconds later, he's with his agent, and the agent is like, did you read the Herald? And he's like, no, what did it say? So it's like clearly
he pretends he cares about
his image as sorry, you go. No,
he cares about who cares about his image.
Exactly.
So he doesn't give a shit that the kind of normal watchers, the normal viewers, he doesn't really care what their opinion is. He cares
common man, the Charlie Meadows.
Which, well, I mean, they're not common. They're more like we said, yuppies, right?
Oh, okay, yeah. Never mind. Make your point. Sorry.
Well, I'm not getting into Charlie. I'm talking about specifically the scene you're talking about, where it's the intro to his character, and the fact that he doesn't give a shit, even though the people at the table literally are raving about the review that was written by, his name is Coen. They were like, did you read Coen's review?
Yeah.
And he's like, no, I don't give a shit about that, basically. They're going to be wrapping it with fish paper, newspaper.
They'll be wrapping it in they'll be wrapping fish in it in the morning.
They'll be yeah, exactly. So he's completely dismissing what their opinion is of his play because he's above kind of what their opinion is. Right. But then when he gets into a realm where he's with somebody who's in the industry with him, that's when I think that's what you're saying. Yeah, he gives a shit what he's about to say, but even to the extent of pretending that he didn't know what the review was, because he did, because the other people just told him.
Exactly.
And that's what was so funny about that, because he's like, no, tell me.
He cares, right. He's so up his own, thank you, babe. He's so up his own ass with his opinion, but also when he meets with the common man who he claims to represent,
when he meets Charlie,
Charlie's like, I could tell you some stories. And Barton is like, yes, you could tell me. And then he'll spout off about his own shit. Yeah. And he's so self-upset. Like, when he's talking to... His muse, and we'll talk about muses more with Llewyn Davis, but one of his big... not even muses. One of his... Something that he's really interested in is the life of the mind and, the struggle, the artist's struggle.
Yeah.
And when he's talking to W.P. Mayhew's clearly an alcoholic,
Southern writer,
Mark Twainy kind of guy.
Yeah.
When he's talking to him and Mayhew's drinking, he's telling Mayhew oh, I've never found writing to help my drinking, because Mayhew says that drinking helps him
to help my writing. Or
yeah.
You say
Fink says I've never found drinking to help my writing, okay. Where Mayhew shares the opposite opinion. But then when Charlie comes in, he drinks
with Charlie.
Charlie, which is also
Charlie kind of brings him down to earth a little bit.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's almost a good friendship.
We all have stories. No.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is a beautiful, and that's what's so great about this movie. There are little contradictions with Barton where he won't listen to Charlie, but there's enough of a connection with them to where when he's in trouble, he feels comfortable enough.
Well, and they do start where Barton is being completely pretentious, which is what you're saying when he first meets with Charlie.
Yeah.
And just going to the fact that they gain mutual respect and become friends.
Yes, exactly. But Charlie also...
30 seconds.
Okay. But I'll make this point as quickly as possible. But Charlie, despite all that, he ultimately picks Barton to, I guess, frame... what do you think Charlie's intentions are? Barton asks at the end, why me?
I have a lot of questions about that, and we can end this segment on that.
But we have to keep talking about Barton for a... Can we?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway,
we're back.
So, with Charlie, I think he is... It's like, what is he picking Barton for, I guess? I always took that as I don't know if I always took it like this, but now I take it as Barton asking, why did you let me live? Because he could have killed Barton, obviously. Why do you think Like, do you think he's like this?
I have more questions and confusion when it comes to this part of the story.
Yeah. Let's talk about it because kind of. I mean, that's the most confusing part.
Let's start with before we get even to that. Okay, so we figured out that they are vibing now. They're like kind of friends, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just in their discussion, even before any real shit goes down in the hotel.
Yeah.
Right. So there's another subplot going on where Barton gets involved with a woman who's married to another writer. They end up having an affair.
She's the mistress of the other writer, technically. Which I think actually adds to you said married. She's the mistress. She's the other one.
She is. She's the side.
Which I feel like adds something to the... Because it's not Barton,
it does. But it's another man's woman.
Sure.
He gets involved with her.
Yes.
They hook up in his hotel room.
Mm.
He wakes up. She's dead. Barton has nobody to go to in town. He only has one friend, and that's Charlie. Now they're friends. They've already, like we said, they've established a friendship.
Right.
Or at the very least, somebody who he trusts and is like, holy shit, this dead girl, I woke up and this dead woman is in my bed.
Yeah.
So, Charlie comes in, and immediately when he sees the body, goes into the bathroom and has one of the most realistic vomit scenes I've ever heard. I mean, they don't show it, but I mean, he's throwing up. It's like it's like a drunk throwing.
Yeah, it's like Bill Mayhew level.
Exactly. That's another So he literally his reaction to it is utter surprise, shock, and disgust.
Yeah. Yes.
So, to where you were going with Barton trying to figure out why Charlie's helping him, and then come to find out Charlie is the one that's chopping heads off.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the thing. Her head is her head severed yet? No,
it will be, but it's not yet.
Yeah, it's not yet. But anyway, you kind of get the idea that Charlie's kind of weird and may have had something to do with it. Yeah. And Charlie's reaction is like complete opposite. So what is that all about? That was a question that I had. When we talk about things that don't make sense in movies, that didn't make sense to me the way he reacted. After he ends up throwing up and after his shock, then he's calm, cool, and collected.
I think he's a psychopath. I think he is counting on the fact that Barton or sociopath, whichever one it is that you don't feel anything but you can blend in or whatever.
I don't know. I'm not a doctor.
He's been doing this clearly for long enough to where he has like detectives on his trail, where he has he has a name for himself. So I think he convinces Barton and us that he had nothing to do with it, because I think he's counting on the fact that Barton is going to come to him, and when he gets that knock, I think he's probably practiced that shock. I mean,
okay, so that was
the first
planned.
time you hear Charlie is he's either laughing really hard or crying really hard.
He's laughing uncontrollably to the point of almost crying. Like he's laughing, but his laughter's so hard he's coming to tears.
Yes, exactly. So I think Charlie is that in control of his emotions.
He's kind of creating fake emotions for himself.
Exactly. I mean, the movie never comes out and says that, and maybe that's... I don't think he's got a split personality, but clearly, to me, I can still read the movie as Charlie.
But he's so manipulative to the point that he can change his body to even convince you that he's not involved with a murder like that. Gruesome murder.
Yeah, that's how I feel.
She looks like she was basically stabbed or hacked to death in the bed or something like that.
There's blood everywhere.
There's blood everywhere. You don't know how she was killed. You don't know who killed her, really, but
but I mean,
we can guess.
It's clearly Charlie,
exactly.
And but no, that to me doesn't feel inconsistent with his character.
To that point, for John Goodman to be able to pull off that range of crazy emotions and have us guessing to that level, it's interesting. We looked up before we started this. The guy that played Litnick was actually nominated for an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. Which is insane because John Goodman is so good in that role.
Right. And it's a bigger role. And it's
a much bigger role than Lipnick's role.
Supporting, yeah.
Yeah, and it fits the plot and it fits the character development with Barton.
Yeah.
I mean, even his role in the end, he's got a monologue in the end. How was he not... Unless maybe he was considered for Best Actor for it, but he still is... Barton is the lead.
His range...
Or Turturro's the lead.
His range is better than... what am I trying to say here?
Lipnick is a great character actor.
Lipnick is, Michael Lerner is a great character actor, and he does show range in that role.
Mm-hmm.
And he's always an asshole, but he's I love you asshole, and then an I hate you asshole.
Do you notice he was in Serious Man, Lerner?
Uh-huh.
One quick scene.
He's Solomon Schlutz. Yeah.
Schlutz, yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. So, but yeah, Goodman, I agree. It's surprising because, again, at the beginning of this podcast, I said, I think some of the best dialogue and just performance scenes I've ever seen of just like two people talking. All of the Turturro Goodman scenes in this movie to me are like a blueprint for what a scene should have. Mm-hmm. So
he's even good on camera with Turturro and Lebowski.
Right. Where he literally says no words to him. Goodman is
it's
such
just
an amazing actor.
The
he
way they
literally
look at each
never
other.
says any words to Jesus in the movie.
No.
Anyway, so yeah, I think Goodman though. I don't think he's the devil. I've heard theories that like he's the devil or.
How is he not?
Because.
What about the scene with the fire?
I guess so. Maybe he's like he's a deceiver. I don't really have arguments for why he's not. I also don't think Hotel Earl is. I don't think Hotel Earl is hell though either.
Do you think this is just the seriousness that plays out in the mind of a genius writer? Yeah. Is that what we're seeing? Are we seeing the fantastical from because the Coens will do that. They'll make you think a scene is real,
right,
but it's all in the character's head.
Well, no, because that's the other thing I wanted to get into with Barton. And I want to get back to Charlie because I don't know. Again, I just have more questions with Charlie. But
okay,
with Barton, with Barton, I don't think Barton is this amazing writer at all. I actually think he has a line in the movie where he says, maybe I only had one good idea in me, my play.
Yeah.
And then in his screenplay, I don't know if, clearly in the opening lines of the script, you see that he's written, perhaps, it's like the first couple sentences, and then he adds something that's so unnecessary.
Intro as the play he wrote.
His play, yeah. It's like perhaps we hear the fishmongers in the background. But also,
so he's kind of like a one-hit wonder, and he can't come up with a new thing. And he has writer's block on a wrestling film.
More to my point with this is the last line. So the movie opens with his play, Bear Ruined Choirs, and the last line of the play is, we'll be hearing from that crazy kid again, and I don't mean a postcard. And then the last line...
Was the guy come up and go,
Fish, fresh fish, yeah. And somebody on the stage, who's Frances McDormand, she's one of the characters on stage, by the way.
I don't think I noticed that.
I always heard her voice, and I thought it was her, and then I looked it up and found out she is indeed there. Anyway, but yeah, the last line is, we'll be hearing from that crazy kid again, and I don't mean a postcard. And then the last line, when Barton, at the end of the movie, goes into his room and he hears the detectives reading his script aloud, the last line of the script is, we'll be hearing from that crazy wrestler again, and I don't mean a postcard. So I think Barton I think he played out his idea.
Okay.
I think that he thinks, because his whole thing is about, the great suffering of an artist, I think maybe to your point, yes, he is playing out all this crazy shit, and maybe he's upping this, maybe Audrey was there that night, and they got into a fight or something like that. And maybe he is...
But you think it's just in his head because he saw the girl on the beach?
Yes.
In the photo in his hotel room?
Yeah.
It's just like hotel wall art, right?
Who's a dead ringer for Audrey, for Judy Davis.
Yeah.
So I do think...
And then she comes back into it in a fantasy type of way at the very end of the movie as well. The woman in the photo.
So I think he is up his own ass with everything. Yeah. And I think, he's self-plagiarizing at the end.
And that's why Lipnick is so kind of just talks over him in their first scene together. Mm-hmm. Because he's a dime a dozen. They pay the writers well, but... He, as a Hollywood director, there are 100 of those playwright types that come over all the time.
Right, which is the... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Which is the beauty...
Oh, just the beauty of part of this movie is, you've got Lipnick and Tony Shalhoub, who we haven't even talked about, Geisler.
Geisler's good, man.
Yeah, he's incredible. You've got those two... And Mayhew is part of this, but his own part of the story. But
yeah, I mean, not as important to me. It's interesting, but I think he's more a device to bring the woman into the picture for Barton.
And to make Barton feel even more, once he realizes his hero is a sham, he can justify, I'm more of an artist than my hero.
So it even builds him up more in his own mind.
Yeah, I think so. But there's all this
contradiction. Where he gets the confidence to sleep with the guy's
woman.
I think so.
Yeah, it all
yeah.
kind of ties together. Yeah.
And also, I mean, if she's been co-writing his last couple novels, or basically writing the last couple novels from Mayhew,
Yeah, we didn't get into that at all. But
it's like it puts him on level if he's sleeping with her. You know what I mean? Like I think it raises.
That's a great point.
All to your
that's a great point.
But yeah,
She's the ghostwriter for Mayhew, and then she starts to give Barton ideas because he's completely just lost as to where to go with this story.
Right.
She's like, "Oh, just do this,"
right. So I think
which
part of the
must have been
reason-
a major ego, just dasher to crushed his ego.
when she died, or when
No, to
you
realize
his
that
hero
maybe that's
was-
why she died. Maybe he did kill her in his mind because she kind of took the writing out of his hands, and he's
Right.
this great writer.
So
Maybe,
he
I don't know.
says.
I mean, this is again first watch. I'm trying to really put it together.
And again, to the credit of this movie, it's I feel like when we were talking about Blood and No Country, where it's just you'll get a million things out of these movies if you watch them a bunch of times. But
what else is important? I mean, do
so
you
the
have
last,
something to wrap up on?
I do, and I mean, fuck, I wish we could just talk about this more, but I know we have to move on.
We can.
But-
There's nothing stopping us.
I really want to get to the others though.
Okay. All right. Well, then we should come up with a. Well, I don't know what to come up with.
There's
but-
one more thing I want to bring up, and
That's
then I'll have spoken my piece, and then maybe at the end we can bring up our other stuff with this movie. But the last thing I want to bring up is just the contradictory shit that Tony Shalhoub says and Michael Lerner says.
Yeah.
With
yeah.
Michael Lerner being we know that you're special, Barton. He's constantly the first couple scenes, he's kissing Barton's ass.
Mm-hmm.
He's saying you're the only one who can bring us that Barton Fink feeling. And there's the
But then he immediately,
then at the
as
end,
he's saying, you're the only one that can bring us that Barton Fink feeling. But he's at the same time, we all kind of have a little bit of Barton Fink in us, don't we? But you're the one that knows it more than anybody because you're Barton.
being Barton
right?
Fink, you would have it in spades. I would hope.
Yeah,
Yeah,
in spades, exactly.
So, but then at the end, when Barton, submits a script, and Lipnick is what the fuck is this shit, And Lipnick is you think I don't have 20 other writers who are just like you?
Yeah.
You're not special.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah,
and Ben Geisler's saying, he's Tony Shalhoub talking about how unimportant wrestling movies are, but then when Barton doesn't have anything for it, he's like, "Are you kidding me? I stuck my neck out for you. I told him it was great." Maybe he's not.
But these guys are all in the
as
same.
Lipnick,
They keep
but-
doing the same thing on rinse and repeat,
Right.
which is what Hollywood does. And this is 1941 Hollywood, and they
Right.
still do the same thing. So what happens is you end up with Lerner or with Lipnick,
Right.
basically. I had a good point there. Where Lipnick is kind of. Let's just all right. So Geisler, we're gonna have to cut this out.
No, that's all right.
I had something there, and I
keep
just
going.
lost it.
You'll get the momentum back.
Maybe I don't know.
So 1940s Hollywood. Oh, that thing is.
Ugh.
I know. So 1940s Hollywood.
Can we just acknowledge this since it's on camera? We're trying to keep. This is. We'll fix it.
Yeah. But you were saying something with Lipnick.
The way things are. That's what my point was. Okay, so the way he has his assistant, played by John Polito, great character actor.
Dude.
In the man. What was the Miller's Crossing? Isn't he?
And he's the brother
Which I
Seamus
actually
in
haven't seen,
Lebowski.
and he's brother Seamus and Lebowski's in
Yeah.
tons of other movies.
Dude,
John
so
Polito,
good.
great character actor. So Polito is Lipnick's assistant. I don't remember what's Polito's name in the movie.
Lou Breeze is the character.
Lou Breeze. Okay, so Lou Breeze. Geisler actually has a really good comment about Lou Breeze.
It's so just offhanded and quick.
So his first phone call, Geisler's first phone call with Lou Breeze, Breeze calls him, and Geisler goes, how's Lipnick's ass smell today?
Right.
It's just it's a really funny, quippy movie. It's written as a play. The movie itself.
Totally. Yeah.
It's kind of tongue in cheek in that way.
But then you also with Shalhoub's character. I know you have a point. Just on part
sure.
of that conversation, and part of what I was getting at with the characters constantly acting like they're big shots, but then turning themselves around and
contradicting.
Exactly. Geisler also says, "Oh yeah, well you tell Lipnick he can kiss my dimpled ass," and then all he says after that is, "Wait, no. All right." So he totally just backpedals and puts his foot in his mouth with it.
But it just makes it seem like that's the way these guys operate. Mm-hmm. And okay, so one more thing to that point is Lou Breeze in the scene where after Barton kills the girl and he's at the mansion at the poolside, where you think, I saw this coming from a million miles away, even on a first watch.
Of course.
Lipnick is about to tell Barton to kiss his feet, and then he kind of flips it around and you realize he's telling Lou Breeze to kiss his feet, and he's still kind of kissing Barton's ass.
Right.
I saw that coming, but it's funny.
You
to
mean
that
you
point,
saw that Lipnick was going to turn on Polito?
I knew that Lipnick was going to kiss Barton's feet.
Okay.
I was already, which kind of bothers me because I shouldn't have been a step ahead on that.
We're good, but dude,
But I think I've seen enough movies now that I knew that was
Exactly.
coming.
Yes.
But I think if I watched that movie in 1991, I would not have seen it coming.
Right,
But
because you knew
to me it was very obvious.
because things were going so badly for Barton that
I
this movie
like wrote
can't-
that down as I was watching it. Like it was
Yeah.
like this is going to happen, and then it happened.
Right. All right. Go ahead. Go ahead.
But to that point, in that scene, and credit to Lou Breeze as a character, doesn't end up kissing Lipnick's feet.
Right.
But he gets fired because he doesn't kiss Lipnick's feet.
Barton's feet. Right.
Kiss Barton's feet.
Okay,
You're right.
I just
You're,
want to make
you're,
sure.
you're absolutely right.
Okay.
Yeah, kiss Barton's feet.
Right.
Oh,
yeah. Thanks. Good.
Yeah, you're gonna break that. So, to that point, a few scenes later, or the next scene with Lipnick, Lou Breeze is still working for him.
Right, which
so
is-
it was all horseshit. It was all for show. It was all like, you know, trying to muscle people, trying to make himself look like a big shot
Yes.
in front of this writer who he apparently ends up having respect for. I don't know. Although he does go
Lipnick
into the whole
doesn't
monologue about saying that he owns Barton. So
I don't
there's
think he
that
has
there.
respect. No, dude. We'll talk about
But
this.
he
with the
kisses his
ending.
feet. So I'm just
he kissed Ed. He kissed because he thought. But then once he realizes that Barton is,
then he's
just
like, "You're
a
finished
dime
in
a
this
dozen."
business. I'm going to keep you on payroll, but
Right.
you're never going
It's
to work for anybody
basically
else again."
Writing purgatory for Barton. 'Cause
Exactly.
It's like everything you write is not going to be made.
That's a good segue. How does
And
that
everything you write
purgatory
belongs
play
to me.
into his ending with John Goodman as possibly the devil and him being in this hotel hell?
Let's talk about
Does
that.
that
When
tie
we talk
together?
about endings, when
Okay,
we talk
yeah,
about
let's talk about
endings,
endings.
let's talk about
All right,
that
so-
because I have a
Do we have anything else on this movie for now? Because we got to move on.
It's yes. If we kept going, we could go for 5 minutes or 5 years with this. So, for now, I've spoken my piece. When we can talk about the endings, we'll
Come back to
to
it.
back.
Sure, perfect.
I'll have never spoken my piece on this movie. So, for the sake of this podcast, yes, let's move on.
We're in purgatory for this
Yeah.
conversation. That's fine. Fair enough. All right, what's the next one?
Inside Llewyn Davis.
Ooh, fuck.
You have to change the screen.
Oh shit! Yeah.
Boo.
Oh, one
Wrong
more time.
movie.
Oh, there we go. All right, yeah. So inside.
Look at the
Llewyn
production
Davis.
quality of this. It's believe it or not, this is way better than before.
All right. Well, what do you think about this movie? Do you like it? Do you hate it? Do you feel in between?
All right, weren't we gonna intro? I said put a pin in.
Our
Character
character arcs. Is
Oh,
what you want.
character arcs.
So,
okay.
we're
We wanted
gonna
to intro each movie based on our first interaction with the movie.
Yes.
All right, I have nothing, and I'm not kidding because I don't remember the first time I saw this movie. All I
Yeah.
know is after the first time I saw it, I loved it, and I've seen it probably 5 times all the way through.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe 6 now to present date, if I had to guess, something like that.
Gotcha.
It's a movie I really enjoy. I like it a lot. I love the music. Am I a fan of folk music? No, I'm not a Dylan guy. So first impressions, like, it's 60s folk music.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I read, what's the Jack Kerouac, like, On the Road? That kind of plays into this movie.
Yeah.
So when I first saw it, I did draw kind of those comparisons.
It's funny because Garrett
Um,
Hedlund is in this movie, and he's actually in the movie of On the Road.
Oh,
Hedlund's Johnny Five.
well, okay, so I thought that he was supposed to be a Kerouac type of character. Of course, he seems
He is
like it.
literally-
But he was in the Kerouac movie? I
In
did
the
not
On
know
the
that.
Road movie, he's like the
I only this is the only time I can ever say this, but I only read the book
Gotcha.
and I did not see that movie.
Gotcha. I don't know anything. I know.
Well, the book is
I saw
good.
the trailer. That's it.
Oh, you didn't see
For
that
the movie. I knew it was a book. but
Maybe the movie's good. I have no idea, but that's Headland.
Garrett Hedlund is his
Okay.
name, which I think he's one of the underappreciated, underused actors. But we can talk about that.
He's very good in this, and he doesn't speak.
right. It's awesome.
He does, but it's also like when he does speak, even though you have the Kerouac vibe,
Yeah.
he speaks in the way that Kerouac wrote his, like, what's a stream of consciousness
Yeah,
writing,
yes.
like poetic
Yes.
stream of consciousness.
He's-
His only lines in that movie are that. So
Mhm.
yeah, that's off on a tangent on this movie. Anyways, first impressions, you had that kind of vibe. Kerouac, obviously Bob Dylan influence, and 60s New York.
Dave Van Ronk is who the character is based off of. Who Dave Van Ronk was like the big folk sensation
That didn't make it.
right before. Well, he did make it, But
Not like
Dylan's success was so massive that this guy, he didn't get overshadowed. He was a little bit before Dylan got really, really big. But Dylan totally.
Well, the last scene of this movie,
guy.
you have Bob Dylan in the end at the Gaslight bar, right?
Yeah, and Dave Van Ronk was the guy who. There's an album called Inside Dave Van Ronk, and the album cover for Inside Llewyn Davis.
Okay, these things I did not know.
It's the photography is like the exact same as this. So this,
How is that album?
I don't know. I've never listened to it. I'm not like a huge.
You like Dylan though.
I love Dylan, but yeah, I've not listened to Dave Van Ronk much, other than
4, 3.
right.
Did I do that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think with this one, it is. Yes, I did. I saw it at the right time. Like I think it is. It's like I think it's the tightest of these movies because of how circular it is. I'm kind of rehashing shit I said, but whatever.
Well, nobody knows that except us.
Right, I know you'll have to cut.
It's the most tightly constructed because of how circular.
Because of how circular. Because you can. It feels like a film student had an idea. It was like, whoa, what if we like made a movie that's like about a guy, and then the whole journey element of it, and then like the Coens, they did such a good job of, and many movies have done this, but they did such a good job of slipping the circular part into it. Where like when he's back on stage again and all that stuff, you feel like there are things that are referenced early on. You know, when he says to the club owner, he's like, "Sorry, I was a mess last night." All that shit
At
ends
the
up
end,
getting
you
paid
kind
off.
of don't know if he's doing that again.
Yes.
Or if it's the first scene of the movie.
Exactly.
And there's a question about that. You do figure that out, and it is explained.
And which it is.
But it does kind of just make it like.
It's very. It's not an obvious like. Oh wait. No.
Cyclical.
Yes.
Yeah.
There are like things that are alluded to that get brought back into it. I mean, the club owner's wearing a red shirt in that first scene, and then when Llewyn is, in the club making a fool. Or no, sorry.
Is he wearing a different colored shirt?
No, he's wearing a red shirt again.
Okay,
so
yeah,
I
so
believe
you know
it's. Yeah. But the movie, there's not like an obvious. There is an obvious point.
But not at that point. You are
Exactly.
questioning at that point, and you're thinking, are we seeing him back at the Gaslight after he went through the road trip?
Right.
And all the other shit he went through?
Right.
Did he decide not to become a merchant marine?
Right.
Or is this the first scene of the movie and we're just seeing it from a different perspective this time?
Exactly, which is what's so fucking cool about that movie. Because,
Yeah.
and I mean, I think with it, let me look at my notes, like, I think basically that he was sleeping at the Gorfines, and usually these
The Gorfines come into it too in that question mark.
Yes, like he's sleeping at the Gorfines in like one of the first scenes of the movie after he gets his ass kicked outside the bar.
It's the second scene of the movie.
Yeah, it cuts to him at the Gorfines,
Where he gets the
and
cat.
Fare the Well is playing, all that stuff.
Which, can I say this now, since I don't know if we're going to talk about music, which we'll do a disservice to the movie to not talk about the music.
Yeah.
But after the first scene, the second scene, like, moves me basically to tears.
Really?
Every time I watch it, yeah.
I
don't know what it is,
Which scene?
but the second scene when Fare Thee Well is playing.
Really? Yeah.
And it's great where, okay, so it starts, he's leaving and he puts the record on from he and his partner, Mike.
Yeah.
Right? So it's that record, it's them singing Fare Thee Well.
Yeah.
And it starts with their vocals, and then it goes into a whole dialogue scene with him and a couple of other people, and you start to learn who Llewyn is. But the music at that point, all the vocals cut out, and you just have an instrumental for about maybe a minute and a half while he's having this dialogue with people, kind of trying to figure out where he's going to stay and what his gigs are,
what he's going to do with the cat.
What he's going to do with the cat. Oh yeah,
Right.
Yeah. Wait, he calls Gorfine. And Gorfine's in a lecture, and the secretary asks what the message is, and he says, "Don't worry, Llewyn has the cat."
Yeah.
She says, "Llewyn is the cat."
Is the cat? Yeah.
And then you kind of think maybe there's some symbolism there that Llewyn is actually the
it's
cat.
like a cue for the audience.
Anyways, that scene, just the way the music starts, and then they have this conversation, you're starting to figure out Llewyn, and then it goes back to him being on the train with the cat, and the vocals come back in.
Right.
That's where it hits me, like, right in the feels. It really just kind of, like, gets me. Like, that's one of my favorite scenes in the entire movie. There's a lot of humanity on the train with other people looking at him with the cat.
Yeah.
They're like the two kids. They make eye contact. They smile at each other. It's beautiful music is playing, and the cat is watching itself on his shoulder in the reflection. But there's a lot going on there. There's just so
Yeah.
much humanity, and then the cat escapes on the train. He goes back and gets it.
Right.
So you start to like Lewin as a person because
Yeah.
he doesn't just
He's-
like let the cat
Well,
go.
there's a famous
He does at some point.
there's a screenwriting book that got really famous like 10 years ago, and it's called Save the Cat. Kind of the theory behind that title is to make your character likable. You have them do something very admirable at the beginning of the movie, like
Because
saving
he's
a cat.
a piece of shit.
So this movie
Yeah.
literally has Lewin saving a cat. And I
Yeah.
think that's the Coens.
That's
Obviously,
funny.
they're so above using a screenwriting book for like, oh, here's the formula.
Yeah.
But it's funny that they use that.
But they're smart
as
enough to use that as a device, to
because
as a
it fucking
character
works.
device. Yeah.
But also in that sequence, there's one of the right before the kids see him on the train. There's a guy who has glasses, who I think has been in other Coen movies, who later on sees him when he
And-
doesn't have the cat.
Yeah.
Which adds to the
And they make eye
heaviness.
contact again.
Because
Well, the guy's
he
just
has the
staring
cat,
at him.
right? Well, he has the cat the first time the guy's looking
Mhm.
at him, and then when he doesn't have the cat the second time, I reflect as a viewer like, oh shit, Lewin's got to be feeling guilty about that. But anyway,
Mhm.
I agree. There is humanity, and it feels like a.
I'm sorry, you were making a point, and I just
It's
totally
okay.
went off the
It's
rail
okay.
as I started talking about the music in that first scene.
No, I agree. I mean, you can't. This this movie. If out of these three movies, there's one that requires a discussion about the music, it's this one, of course.
Yeah,
So no, I'm glad you brought that up. And yeah, that you're right. It does add humanity to it, and I think that's. I mean, part of the again, we're talking about form and content, and this is
Mhm.
a movie that does a great job of making itself feel like it's a folk song. Like I know you don't listen to a lot of folk music, but like the trip across
Even
America,
I
the
like-
hardships of
Yeah.
couch to couch and like living poor and all that shit, like. That is very folksy and Dylan-y, you know what I mean? Like the kind of like rough living, but it's manufactured rough living because, you know, folk originated from black, not just, but people who went through hardships,
Like slave songs.
slave
Yeah.
songs, and also like Irish, really poor Irish people. Like
Okay.
folk exists everywhere, but
Yeah.
like you've got yuppies, you know.
Well, even like mountain people, like West Virginia
Yes.
mountain people, that kind
It's
of.
all
yeah.
folk music is always the music of the disenfranchised.
Mhm.
And you've got Lewin, who, you know, he's staying with the Gorfines. Like, he has access to this upper echelon shit.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of what folk is. It's cultural appropriation, but not for, you know,
How-
race
so-
specifically, but, like,
Yeah.
for the upper class kind of co-opting this lower class style of music
Well-
and making money off of it, which is funny because it's...
How do you feel that plays into Barton Fink? I drew a huge parallel
Oh,
between their
of
two
course.
characters. Barton as a writer,
Yes.
writing for the common man,
Right,
and
but not being one himself, and
Not
not
at
giving
all.
the time, and putting himself above the common man.
Mhm.
Yes.
And Lewin kind of just shitting on everybody. He's so like up his own ass about
Yeah.
the importance of the music that he's making.
Right.
He kind of like shits on like upper class people though.
He does, which is why I like
he
Lewin
does
more. as a
yeah,
character.
he does like try to live that life as righteously as possible. Also, not to mention he's not
No.
he mingles with well-to-do people.
Right.
But at the end of the day, if he doesn't make it in his career, he's a merchant marine. He's going to be
Right.
on a boat, like shoveling coal into the
Yeah.
furnace on a steamboat, basically.
Yes.
I mean, for all I know about boats in 1969,
Yeah. I as
Uh,
much as I love John
merchant
Turturro's
marines. I don't know what they did, but I mean,
But
they-
not
a nice life.
glamorous,
No.
right?
And
so
that plays into his father. I mean, they go into that too.
So-
and that's what he was.
Lewin is very consistent, which
Yeah.
I agree. He's not as phony as Barton
No.
is at all.
No.
Because you're right, he does get into a fight with the Gorfines, even though he doesn't have a place to stay, right?
That fight is hilarious, by the way.
dude, Adriana and I talked about it a couple.
About the cat?
Yes,
Where is his
testicles?
scrotum?
Yeah, where is his scrotum?
Who says scrotum in a movie?
Right, and
That's
like
insane.
when something that trivial is taken that seriously,
Mhm.
like that is just everything, dude.
But you feel bad for her because he's a dick,
of
and
course,
like she's just trying to sing along with his song.
right? That's why it's so difficult because it's like a Larry David scenario. Like
Yeah.
you can see both of their sides of
Yeah,
it so
exactly.
perfectly. But what I was gonna say about like what I think the movie, and this is again, I've only seen this 1.5 times. I
Mhm.
went back and rewatched the intro a little bit, but like, what I can get out of it so far is like, if you're looking at the movie with the way it's structured, Lewin letting the cat go at the beginning is inconsistent with him saving the cat, or not letting the cat escape at the end of the movie, because the way it's
Yeah,
structured,
yeah.
it's
well,
like
there's also a middle part with the cat too.
yes, right. Which is why I think the
He
movie
abandons the cat in the car.
Yeah, I think the movie though, because at the end, which the scene. Okay, so at the beginning of the movie, he gets his ass kicked at the in the alley.
Yeah.
He wakes up the Gorfines.
Mhm.
He opens. He leaves. Cat gets out.
Locks
Whole
himself out.
movie happens.
Yeah.
Then the cat thing happens, I guess, non-linearly with at the end with the way it happens at the beginning, because at the end of the movie he puts the cat back in the apartment and then he gets his ass kicked. Where at the beginning of the movie he gets his ass kicked, and then the next day is when the cat gets loose. So I do think.
Wait, so when he puts the cat back into the apartment, then he goes back to the club that night and gets his ass kicked?
Yes.
So are those scenes shown out of order?
Yes.
Or okay.
Yes.
Right. Interesting. I never noticed that.
You know what? Okay. So like literally, just
That's a
again
good
to
point.
walk through
Yeah.
it. Beginning of the movie, he's in the gaslight playing the
Mhm.
song. Bartender or club owner tells him your friend's outside. He gets his ass kicked by the guy. Next morning, wakes up with the Gorfines.
Mm-hmm.
Whole movie plays out. He ends up with the Gorfines again.
Mhm.
Everything's fine. Cat he puts back into the room. Then he goes to the gaslight, and then basically the first scene plays out again, and he gets his ass kicked. That's the end of the movie, right? So it's out of order. Those are the only two things that I noticed that are out of order. Is in the first half of the movie, he gets his ass kicked. Then the cat thing happens. Second, end of the movie, the denouement basically is he puts the cat back in the apartment. Everything's fine. Then he goes to the gaslight. He still gets his ass kicked. So I actually think him sleeping at the Gorfines, and this is just like an easy. I know I'll watch this. I'll listen to this podcast and be like, "What the fuck was I talking about?"
No,
Like,
no.
and I'll
Now that
watch
you're
it again,
saying this,
but-
I'm going to see that and put it together like visually, because I never noticed that. That's
Yeah.
very interesting.
So like
I've
I
seen
do
this
think,
movie enough times that I've never watched it analytically the way I did last time. So yeah,
but I do think
but now I can't not.
with that info, I think that the whole, basically everything up until the second time we see him at the Gorfines, when it's Fare Thee Well is playing again, I think all of that
That's
stuff
the third
is
time you see him at the Gorfines.
Right. I think that
But
is.
you mean the second time? That's the same night.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay.
But I think the whole movie up to that point is like what his life would be if he decides to keep letting bad shit happen to him.
Okay, that's a
You know
good
what I
point.
mean?
Now, how do you feel about that's? Honestly, I don't know how much more we have to talk about this movie. Do you have
Okay.
a lot more?
No.
Because we can almost take
wanna
that
hear
and
more-
segue into A Serious Man.
Yeah, I would like to.
Because you just brought up the fact that he allows bad shit to happen to him.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I want to discuss that a little bit.
With Lewin or
with
the
Lewin,
series?
with Lewin,
Okay.
and then we can segue into the way that Larry Gopnik definitely allows bad shit to happen to him, and it's a little more in your face.
Right.
But with Lewin, now the person that makes that very clear, other than us as a viewer, is Jean. Okay.
Jean is the yeah.
Jean
Carey
is
Mulligan.
the
Yeah.
girl used to be his girlfriend. She's dating some nerdy guy now.
Right. Yeah.
A square.
That's
you know.
it's like all the stuff in between is all the other shit we could talk about with this, because every scene is such a banger in this movie.
But I think it's very important to talk about, like, as far as her bringing to light in a very obvious way the fact that he kind of has no plan for his life.
Yes.
And allows things to happen to him, and I think he wants that though. Like he's asking for it. There are some lines that like specifically state that. I think especially from her.
Yeah.
From her.
Yeah, she's like, you're just gonna let bad shit keep happening to you, or
because
something
you,
like
no,
that.
she says because you want it to.
Yes.
And that's the point of like kind of you do as an audience member kind of question does this guy like what's his goal, like what's he going for?
Like,
but he's like I don't have a goal. He only cares about the music and that's it. That's it. But it's got a lot of other demons, a lot of other shit going on. So can we discuss that at all?
Please.
This is the first time you saw it, and this is as many times as I've seen this movie, and I told you before we started this, I was unable to make a lot of notes on this for some reason. So maybe it's something I can come back to and think of. But yeah, I was a little bit surprised, as much as I love this movie, that I didn't feel like I had as much to say. But now that we're talking about it, I wish I kind of looked at it maybe from a different angle.
I know what you're saying.
Because I feel like I'm saying nothing right now.
No,
and I think there's a
no.
lot to discuss. about
agree.
Lewin's character as it relates to where he's going in his life.
Yeah, I think it's similar to Barton. I think this is like a great link. It's funny because I originally thought with this podcast that there would be more to talk about with Barton and A Serious Man. I always look at those as very like, for some reason they both just hit me on the same level.
I kind of think there is.
Lewin Davis
because we're coming
does
to
too,
it.
but
Yeah, but are we hitting a brick wall here?
no, not at all. I think
So what do you got
Lewin
on
is
that
a
topic?
really good. You can connect Lewin in so many ways to Barton on the artist's, musing on suffering,
Mhm.
but you can also link it to A Serious Man with all this bad shit happening that he feels like he has no control over, which Barton has too. But for some reason, Lewin, I think maybe because it's tight, its construction, and I think part of the fact that with The Serious Man, there's not like there's nothing totally circular with it. There are things that happen early on where they get paid off. Same story with Barton, but with Lewin, because it feels circular, you feel like even on the first watching, you're like, holy shit. Okay, I kind of know what this is on like an artistic level. That's how I feel about it. You know what I mean?
I think that's probably what I was saying. Like, I didn't make as many notes about this movie because,
Yeah.
like, as soon as you kind of just analyzing it, as soon as you kind of lay out who the characters are, you just kind of have to watch them for what their ride is.
Yes,
And there's not a lot of depth in the story and the plot in this
Right.
one.
that's true.
And
This movie doesn't have a Charlie Meadows.
no,
I think that's
there's no clear antagonist,
right.
right?
I agree. I mean, John Goodman, kind of, but not. That's a
No,
section.
but yeah, that's just like a portion of. Yeah, he goes on a road trip, and it's really interesting. He brings up when he gets back to New York from going on his road trip to Chicago. He asks Jean if she got the abortion yet, and she's like, "Dude, that's not like scheduled till Monday or something."
Yeah.
She's like, "I saw you like a week ago,"
Right.
and he's like, "Oh yeah, it felt like I was gone for much longer."
Right.
And the movie does kind of not even on the timeline of like, okay, the movie starts and then it's over in an hour and 45 minutes. That scene where he's on the road trip does feel like it takes a lot out of his life.
Totally.
And, it's just like there's a lot of emotional stuff that goes on. So he's like, oh yeah, I forgot. I was only gone a couple days.
Right.
So he did a road trip for like a day and a half and was there and left and came back in a day and a half.
Yeah.
So it was, what was the point of that?
That it feels like longer. No, I think part.
I
of
think
it,
I said the point before I said that to explain it, and now I forgot what the actual first point was that I made. I don't know.
Damn it. Okay. Well, you started on that point with we were talking about it being circular and like how it feels like it's in a way. Yes, I think it's as deep as these other movies. Maybe not as quite, maybe not quite as deep, but it is very goddamn deep, and it certainly requires a second viewing.
Yeah.
But my argument was that, or my point, or my theory, I guess, on part of why it feels like you can get everything you need to get out of it on maybe one or two viewings, which also might be true with the other movies. But with this one, it feels like it requires the least viewings because it's like, in my mind, I'm like, okay, if I can figure out the linear structure of this movie, then I can figure out what it's saying. But then when I had that discovery about like, okay, well, it's actually not technically linear because there is an event that happens out of order. You see, two events twice that happen out of order. Like, it changes the meaning of the movie.
Well, I actually made a note because they even throw something else in to kind of twist you to make you think that that's not the same night.
Yeah.
So what's very important, if you have any idea of the setting of New York itself, and they bring it up in the movie, he's he's in the village, right?
Yeah.
He's in the village. That's where like the hippie stuff is going on,
Yeah.
right? So that's where the folk music's
The
happening,
beats.
right?
Yeah.
Right. So in that last scene when he gets back from Chicago, not the last scene, but one of toward the end of the movie, he's actually walking downtown. And he's at, he's in Manhattan. Well, yeah. The village is in Manhattan. But he's in Manhattan, like Times Square, like downtown. Almost like Radio City Music Hall or something.
Gotcha.
Because you see him he's walking past like movie posters.
Okay.
Or like a marquee that's definitely like downtown Manhattan.
Yeah.
Right? Or, yeah. Like, I don't know how you describe it, but
it's in like a well-populated
like
area,
Times
but-
Square kind of area, like that
Yeah.
kind of area. He's
Yeah.
walking by, And I thought that he got through his whole bullshit with the whole not getting his record deal thing and then came back to making music. And in the last scene where he's singing, he's definitely more joyful and more passionate than he was, I think, the first time you saw him.
Yeah.
Like,
sure.
even the way he's belting out the notes is much different. And you kind of think, oh, maybe he's getting out of this, like, poor, starving artist thing and, like, trying to, like, build his career as a commercial artist.
Yeah.
But then you realize he's actually in the gaslight in that scene.
Right.
And then I was like, oh, he's like in a different place now. So it almost like shows you the same scene, but gives you a different perspective on it.
Yeah, like Pulp Fiction does that.
Yeah, really.
You know, with Honey Bunny.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think it's the same. I know you're talking about it much.
You know what I'm saying? Did that make sense?
Yes.
Put that, yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Just noticing those little things, and maybe that's just the journey the movie took me through, and maybe it was the same.
Yeah.
Exact thing happening, but I just felt like he was in a better place at the end.
Yes.
Which this movie doesn't have a real thick plot, so I mean, to be able to follow that character and feel better for him at the end, as unlikable as he is, he's pretty likable. And you have to respect what he went through.
I agree, man, and he doesn't end up wanting to set when the F. Murray Abram, the guy from Scarface, when he at the end, when in the middle, when he wants to offer him another gig to play second fiddle to somebody, he says no. Yeah, and he says he doesn't. He's not going to play with anybody else, basically. So
he'd been there, done that, and it didn't go well, and he went on to after Mike's death, he made a clear decision that he was going down the path of being just doing it for himself.
Yeah. Exactly. So I think
at all costs.
I take the ending as a very. I take it optimistically, for sure.
I do too.
And
I think I feel good at the end of that movie, as rough as it is to get through.
Yeah, like when he says "au revoir" to the guy, it's like he's saying bye to his demons, I think.
You mean when the guy beats him up and
and the guy
he's laying in the cab. He's laying in the gutter, and a guy just kicked his ass, and he's like just lets it go and smiles. Like he has a little smile, smirk.
Yeah, like I think the movie has a very maybe it's not very optimistic, but when it ended, I wasn't like, oh, that was just really depressing. Like I felt very happy for Lewin.
Just to bring this all full circle, did the Dylan song at the end or the Dylan performance? It's not Dylan, but it was a Dylan song, and then there was a little shadow actor playing it. Did that do anything for you? Do you know that song? I'm not familiar.
I know the song.
Okay.
It didn't.
Did it hit you emotionally? Because I feel like it was a really emotional film in a lot of places.
Mostly just optimistically. Like I figured, Lewin, because I think everybody's been through these situations in life where you go through like just a fucking rough patch, and then like somehow you like, and it's usually just in your own mind, but like some big event happens where you feel like, all right, the universe has handed me my ass. And I feel like for some reason I'm at the end of this. Like,
John Goodman kind of says that to him in the back of the car. He's like, he says something like, I'm going to be laughing at all the bad things that are happening to you.
Yep.
That's right.
Roland Turner is going to be 1,000 miles away or whatever. Yeah.
It's funny.
Which is another layer.
That's a great point, because I never realized that as it related to Lewin's story itself.
Yeah, because I thought that's what he was saying was happening to him.
I never noticed that, because so they have a little tiff as two characters,
right?
And on the surface, you just think they're arguing and beefing, like they're just like having an argument in the car,
right?
And basically, Lewin says, "Do you think if Roland, Mr. Turner, do you think if I stuck that cane up your ass, you think it'd go all the way up, or a little bit would stick out?" And then, like you said, Turner goes into, I used to practice Santeria.
Like voodoo,
basically, he's like, you'll have a pain in your side 10 years from now, and you'll say, maybe that... But, that was a great point.
I definitely, and that adds to we talked about it with Barton, and this might be a good segue into the last movie, but like, because all these movies feel like they have supernatural intervention, for sure. Like, there's nothing in the text directly that shows that that's happening, but all these movies feel that way. And I think the Goodman character, also in this movie, he's the one who, on the text level, adds that possibility of supernatural intervention. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but it's only like, I think Adriana made a good point. It's more about like Lewin's, it's more like saying how his life is going to turn out,
Yes.
More so than
Oh, in a negative way.
Exactly.
Like you put a curse on him and he's just fucked.
Yeah,
but Lewin's life was fucked.
I think Roland was
I
full.
think it was a representation of how his life is going at the current moment.
Yes, exactly.
Gotcha. I guess.
But no, I agree. I also think, in terms of supernatural intervention, John Goodman and Fink is like, it's represented.
Oh, it's so much bigger, of
more
course.
clearly.
Right.
Whereas Roland Turner is more kind of just full of shit.
Right, which is why I think it's Lewin doing the most damage to himself. But I do think if you wanted to make an argument for the supernatural, this movie brings that play into it.
How do you see that to segue? We had another way, I think, to segue into
so Serious Man. That's what that whole movie is about. Is his questioning of with Barton Fink. It's like the devil, Goodman, doing things to him.
All right, I have a theory.
It's Hashem doing it to him. You know. But one last thing. I have one last thing I want to talk about with Llewyn Davis for this segment. Did you notice the guy beats him up, gets into a cab?
Yeah.
From Llewyn's point of view, we see the cab 2 more times. One when it's driving.
It rounds the corner and almost skids out.
Yes. So you see the car twice, and it's
in that scene.
And in one of the shots, you see the cab driver alone in the car because the guy gets into a cab.
He whistles the cab down.
Yes.
Yeah.
So he gets into the cab. It cuts to a shot of Llewyn seeing him get in the cab. Cuts back to the cab. It starts driving this way. It very clearly shows there's nobody being driven in the cab.
No, I didn't.
There's just the cab driver alone. Nobody's in the back seat. I rewound it like 20 times.
Oh, really?
To check.
Yeah.
So nobody's there. And then it cuts to Llewyn's reaction again. And then it shows it rounding the corner and skidding out. And it does show the guy in the back of the cab. And then it cuts back to Llewyn, and then he says au revoir, and then the movie ends. So
that more supernatural or things things in the character's head that are represented on screen, but not necessarily what happened.
Yes, because
do you think he felt guilty for just berating that woman and thought he felt like he deserved to get his ass kicked?
Yeah,
so he made up the character in the alley.
There was
the character in the alley was very much like somebody in maybe like the guy that's hunting the prisoners in Oh Brother Where Art Oh Brother Where Art Thou?
Yeah, and the Coens have
like where it's like an apparition.
Anton Chigurh is the same kind of way, where it's like there's a shadowy figure. It's like an omen of bad things to come.
Yeah,
and that movie when it starts with that ass whooping,
that's an awesome.
I feel like that guy. Yeah, I think
cyclical nature of it, and him letting it go. And
dude, Raising Arizona, same kind of thing.
Yeah,
there's the Coens. They have these reoccurring
the biker.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that guy he's a ringer for this movie. But
Interesting.
For Llewyn's shittiness, which to me plays along with my whole he's imagining what his life would be like if he allows grief to continue.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I look at it optimistically is I think when he says au revoir to the guy at the end, I think he's saying I'm not going to let this keep happening, which I know is a stretch, but that's the way I think it.
That's an okay way to take it because the movie doesn't really. It allows you, and this is another great thing about the Coen movies, is they kind of allow you to create your own interpretation at the end of the. It's almost like it's written like a book.
Yeah, yeah.
They allow you a lot of leeway with your imagination, even as you're watching things visually on the screen.
Perfect.
It's not all explained to you.
Yeah.
You have to create, and we talked about this before with other movies. You kind of have to fill in the gaps and create things with your own imagination.
Oh yeah.
They don't reveal everything. And when we get into A Serious Man, I know we're gonna have a lot to talk about with it because there's a lot of that going on with that movie too.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I think that was a good way to wrap up Llewyn Davis. I mean, and you made a lot of really good points as to how I think the optimism of his character at the end, and kind of just the things that he was deciding that he wasn't going to allow to happen in the future. And I kind of got that vibe, but I like the way that you were able to kind of, really explain that.
But yeah, I think a second viewing or multiple viewings definitely will bring more out.
It's been a little while since I'd seen it, but
yeah, it's a good one. I mean, it holds up in the pantheon of Coen movies are kind of like Hanzo Swords, where the only way to compare them is to compare them against things that aren't Hanzo Swords. You know what I mean? That's how Coen movies are.
Pretty much.
Other than
No Country, I think.
Yeah,
is the that's kind of like the sword that was used to kill Bill.
Yeah,
basically.
I
Even though it was parallel to all the other swords, it's the one that did the job.
Yes, and the Hunsucker Proxy is like the crazy 88 sword that gets chopped a million times. Like,
exactly.
There's some lesser ones for sure, but this one belongs in this conversation of perfect movies because it is really just like, yeah, it is perfect.
So, welcome back. Oh, this one's brought to you unofficially by Topo Chico Hard Seltzer and Topo Chico Seltzer.
Yeah, hard and soft.
Yeah. I guess it's soft seltzer. Anyway, so going into A Serious Man, I kind of only have one point to bring up, but it plays into every single character in the movie. So I think there's a lot to run off of with my point.
Yeah, good.
Let me switch the...
All right, there it is.
There we go. Production value, man. Jesus. Look at us.
I know.
This is high-level stuff.
We're coming along, yeah. So, go ahead.
All right, so you brought up a point about everything affecting Larry Gopnik, the main character in A Serious Man, who's not referred to as a serious man. Somebody else is. We can talk about that later.
Well, he refers to himself as trying to be a serious man.
Yeah, well,
a good breakfast.
Nobody else does, though.
Yes, yeah, nobody else takes him seriously. All right, sorry, I didn't want to throw you off, but yes.
You didn't throw me off at all. This is I'm ready to go on this one, I think. All right, so...
Good.
So Gopnik, you had mentioned earlier that comparing him to Llewyn Davis in terms of doing nothing or things happening to him.
Yeah.
More things happening to him.
He hasn't done anything. Yeah.
He says many times, I've done nothing,
Right.
which just plays into his character in a big way. And I hope I can articulate my point when I get to it. Anyway, you mentioned that it was Hashem kind of shitting on him.
Sure.
Which is God?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, to my understanding, that's God.
So basically God shitting on him.
Right.
I took from it that the movie was more about the idea of Schrodinger's paradox. And I never noticed this before as a kind of... I've seen this movie 10 times at least. Well, I told you earlier.
Yeah.
I downloaded this movie. I've owned this movie since 2009 when it came out.
Yeah.
9? Yeah, 9. So, a dozen years. I've seen the movie probably 5 times a year for the last 12 years. So I've seen this movie a lot of times.
Yeah, wow.
And most of those all the way through, maybe. Seen it all the way through a lot of times.
Yeah.
Clips here and there, whatever. This is the first time I realized, or started thinking about Schrodinger's paradox.
Yeah.
And do you know, do you have an idea of what Schrodinger's paradox is?
It's basically the cat is not... Okay, so, well, say, for example, with Schrodinger's paradox... Gosh, I'm not going to keep saying
All right. Simplify it as much as possible.
Something, to my understanding, Schrodinger's paradox is if you don't know something, whether or not something has happened, there is an equal chance of it having happened or not having happened. Right?
Yeah.
So you don't... So if there's a cat in a box...
That was the original, I think, theory.
With the parable or whatever. Yeah, not parable.
Well, there's another factor involved in it, too.
Okay, what's the other factor?
So if you put a cat in a box with a device that has a 50-50 probability of killing the cat.
That's the element of this.
That's the element that's important.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you put a cat in a box with a device, doesn't matter what it is, and it has a 50-50 chance of killing the cat, until the moment you open the box and see whether or not the cat is dead or alive, which is a hard fact once you open the box, you'll know death or life. Up until that very moment, the cat is both dead and alive at the same time, theoretically.
Sure.
Because there's no way of proving one way or the other.
Right.
And coming back to the device, that is a hard, you put in a device that is a hard 50-50.
Yes.
That's the, what you would call the control. Right?
Yeah, sure.
The control in the experiment is the device you know for a fact is 50-50 gonna kill or not kill.
Gotcha.
Okay. So,
but philosophically, do you want to? I could wrap up what I want to say in about 15 seconds.
Go right for it. Yeah.
So the most interesting part to me about everything you just laid out and my understanding of Schrodinger's paradox is the fact that events only happen or don't happen if you're aware of them happening or not happening.
Exactly.
Right? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right. So
that's what the movie's about.
Right.
But what I realized very quickly this time, it took a couple of scenarios, because I started writing down, my notes on this movie were Clyde versus Larry, Cy versus Larry, Judith versus Larry, Arthur versus the daughter, Fagel versus Danny, Larry versus his racist neighbor, Larry versus Dick Dutton, Larry versus Arlen. Who the fuck was Arlen? I forget.
I don't know.
Arlen's the guy that was working for the board that decided whether or not Larry got his tenure.
Yeah.
So Larry versus Arlen, etc.
Larry versus
So it's
rabbis.
all character versus character, and I very quickly started to realize that all of those scenarios kind of came down to Larry saying he's doing nothing. Mm-hmm. Larry is the control device in the box. And every single interaction that he has and every scene that plays out from his character has directly to do with Schrodinger's paradox. So the entire movie and every character interaction is based on Schrodinger's paradox.
Interesting.
I just noticed that.
Well, I knew the movie had a lot of, there's not a clear one antagonist, there are like 40. And yeah, I guess I just looked at it as the nature of...
But even Larry's not I guess he's the protagonist.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you looked at it from the nature of...
of just like every scene needs... the movie needs conflict. And of course the movie is a pile of conflict thrown at Larry.
But it's him dealing with different levels of Schrodinger's paradox over and over and over and over.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, the point is Larry doesn't ever want to open the box. So he keeps putting it off. Mm-hmm. So I guess, am I making sense out of this?
Yeah, go ahead.
Maybe I can go into a specific character discussion.
Do it with what the
name
hell
one.
With Cy Abelman.
With Cy.
Yeah.
With Cy? Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay, all right. I got the one for Cy. Okay, so basically, so Larry doesn't realize he has a situation with his wife, which is him not being involved and not killing the cat.
Yeah.
But him having a situation with his wife is directly created by... maybe this isn't making any sense at all.
No, keep going.
Cy is so involved in creating that conflict between he and his wife.
Yeah.
Because as far as Larry knows, everything's fine with he and his wife.
Right.
Cy kind of steps in and just plays that... maybe Cy's the control device. I don't know.
But Cy dies, though.
Yeah, Cy dies. I don't know.
Okay,
but he also fucks with him in his dreams afterwards, so he's not completely dead.
And he's the one who's referred to as a serious man, also.
Yeah.
So maybe there's something else. But
I don't know. This is just a kind of harebrained scheme that I started coming up with as I started watching the movie. I don't know if I'm articulating
I'm not trying to poke holes. I'm trying to understand.
No. Yeah. I don't know if I'm articulating this properly.
Why do you think Larry is the control device? Let's use another character.
Well, I would say because, just to kind of give an answer to that, is because... Or maybe not. Maybe Larry is the guy that opens the box. But I feel like you have a positive outcome and a negative outcome.
Yeah.
And Larry is the one that has control of whether things will turn out good or not. And because he does nothing, he's kind of the one that is opening the box because he has nothing to do with it in his mind.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Or maybe he's not opening the box because he's always... I wouldn't say he's running from conflict, but he's putting all of that conflict on himself, basically. By
doing nothing.
If he would do something, though, it's funny. It's like George Costanza. Normally I would do nothing. This time I'm going to do something.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's like...
Do you at least see where I'm going with that theory of every interaction that he has?
Oh, I definitely
think
I haven't
hashed out the specifics of how, but I kind of thought that
maybe you're the righteous man at Mr. 9mm. It's like you have all the pieces. Exactly, I don't know if everything's in the right place though.
I haven't put it together. I mean, I'm not writing a mentaculus here, although my notes look like I am.
Look like the mentaculus.
Yeah, they do.
But I know what you mean. It's like Larry's inactivity is almost like his refusal to to be active. His inactivity is refusal to be active, obviously.
Yes.
But his inactivity is like, I think maybe his fear to see whether or not the cat is alive or dead. Like his fear of conflict, maybe. Because he's the one who's constantly allowing all this. But like he could literally say to Sai, fuck you, like get the fuck out of my fucking house. You know what I mean? With Clive, he could be like, fuck you, get the fuck out of my fucking office.
Get out of my office.
Yeah,
you get an F, this is over, we're done with it.
I'm not
or with
taking
Dick Dutton on the phone.
Right.
He could have been like,
I'm canceling right now.
Yeah,
and then yelling at Danny and being like, you can't. But he allows Danny to get away with, what's
Well,
going
I
on?
think
He also is always saying, what's going on? But you think, what?
I think that's his relationship with Danny. Danny is the representation of how he was raised, and why his brother is such a His brother is a how do you put it when you want to say that somebody is like the epitome of the worst of his character? His brother is very representative of his worst, of his weaknesses.
Yeah.
Because if he actually did absolutely nothing, he would be like his brother,
right?
Who has done nothing.
Right. He's
a complete loser.
Yeah. No, it's true.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think his there's a lot that's going on there with Danny too. Think about when this photo right here, right? Mm-hmm. So he's fixing the aerial, or he's done fixing the aerial and looking at the naked woman. But as he's fixing the aerial, there's another scene where he's looking down and watching the guy have a catch with his son. Mm-hmm. Or there's a scene where the guy is hunting with his son or whatever, and they have some sort of bond, even though they look like complete racist weirdos.
Right.
There's some other family dynamic going on there.
Yeah. Something that
he doesn't have with his kid.
Aspire to,
because he's got all the shit is shitting on him constantly. He's in the attorney's office, and Danny calls him and says, "Dad, I can't watch F Troop."
Right.
Well, if he brought the kid up on the roof with him and taught him how to fix the aerial, the kid wouldn't have had that problem. So I think that's Larry's life too, and he's just bringing it back on his kid.
Yeah.
But he doesn't even understand that. Does that make sense? That's a totally different thing than Schrodinger's paradox. But
the movie,
that's another dynamic that I saw between the characters.
But the movie definitely is. I think saying, and again, I didn't.
Sorry, I went off on a tangent.
No. I think I want to add on to what you're saying. I think the movie is a a meditation on the cons of being inactive. Even though at the end of the day, and we'll talk about this with the end of the movie, Larry's fate is much worse than all this trivial shit. It's like Larry's fear of adapting to what's going on and thinking that if he just stays the same, everything will get back to normal. That's his big flaw. He doesn't take the reins.
He even questions it and then goes, "Well, I guess I don't know."
About what?
And nobody in his life is helping him. Well, okay, so when he goes to see the attorney toward the end, he kind of repeats a line that his wife says, or he literally repeats things that his wife says that she clearly got from Sai.
Yeah.
Who is just cucking him.
Yeah.
So totally. It's what are you? He's not going anywhere with anything.
Right. He's not doing anything. Yeah,
and I keep saying I've done nothing. That's gonna solve the problem.
Right, and I think I've done nothing can be taken in two ways. A positive. I didn't do anything to bring this on me, therefore I'm not guilty.
No, he's done nothing negative. But
I'm saying the positive is that he's done nothing negative. But the negative take on that is, yes, exactly. You're doing nothing about all this horrible shit that's piling up in your life. And there is something
which is trivial life shit. It's just, this is how you have to get, it gets hard. Life is not easy.
But I think the reason I'm able to follow him as a character and feel like he has the heroic right to take me by the reins as a viewer, and I'm going through the story through his eyes and all that shit, even though I'm not empathizing totally, it's but at the same time, I am watching it for a reason. I could turn the movie off. Part of the reason I'm still watching is Larry is a good guy. His brother's in trouble.
Righteous.
Yeah, he's morally righteous in some ways. He even says he's trying. He's really trying. But
also, he has no idea what's coming up with his tenure situation.
Yeah.
And he breaks down at one point in his office and
says, "I am not an evil man.
I'm not an evil man." He's like, one time I went to the theater and I watched Swedish Reverie.
Right.
And it wasn't even an erotic film.
Although, in some ways it was.
So he went to a porn theater one time. That's the worst thing he's ever done in his life.
Right.
That, could constitute anybody looking at him in a negative light, but he's just being shit on. So, yeah,
right.
I mean...
But again, his inactivity...
How do you...
Look, think about, like, Daniel Plainview in this situation, even though he's evil and horrible.
Go ahead. I'd love to hear this comparison.
Kind of active character would just never put up with any shit like this.
Well,
and,
that's
like,
the way I
Larry
look at Larry, too, is, like, if I interacted with him, I would treat him the same way everybody else treats him, because he's such a pussy. Like,
yeah, right.
How could you not? Like, people are nice, and that's
Yes.
fine, and you can, like, work with that, even if they're, like, kind of a pushover.
Sure.
You're still going to respect them and recognize that. But some people, I mean, I just feel like he's such a just weak person.
Yeah.
You almost, like, if you had to... Like, if I was working and I was in an interaction with somebody like that, I would do my best just to avoid them, because I feel like I would end up saying something that would clown them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's just like... I cannot be near you because...
Out of fear of, like, disrespect.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I can't even be around you because you're just... Something's going to happen that makes you look like yourself, and that's not good. I
know what you mean. Yeah, but Larry does have enough... It's like he got to this point in his life... That's part of why, I mean, this story is so applicable to so many people. It's like, we all get to points in our lives and we feel like he's about to get tenure. He's got 2 kids. You know, he's got a happy marriage. He feels like he did all the American dream stuff. Mm-hmm. And then there's all that shit that comes after the American dream, like the real life problems where your kid's a fuck up, your other kid, hates your fuck up brother is also there, who, can't get his life together and isn't. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's just, like... It's like...
But I think that comes...
Sorry. I was just going to say, like, he got to this point where he, like, thought everything was fine, and then all this awful shit started happening, and he thinks, like, why me? And it's like, well, dude, yeah, that's life. Like, you have to deal with shit.
Yeah, you got to make a move at some point.
Exactly, yeah. So it's like... I think that's part of, but I think a lot of people get like that in their lives. Like, they think it's like a lot. It exposes the lie that the American dream is. I think that, like, you can't.
Do you think that's where the Coens were coming from with writing this film?
Maybe
exposing the lie of the American dream.
I don't think they were like, we're going to write a movie. Yeah, they're not like, it's like, PTA didn't make There Will Be Blood being like, I'm going to expose capitalism. Like, I think it was
character study that ended up involving that.
Exactly, and the viewer can't help but put that on it.
Well, how do you feel about the so the least helpful people who should be the most helpful people are the rabbis?
Yes.
Do you think?
Oh, totally, dude.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how do you feel about, like, his interaction with the junior rabbi?
I think it's just funny.
Just look at that. Would you look at that parking lot? Right. Like, you're saying nothing, and then he goes to when he sees Nachner, the senior rabbi,
right,
and the whole situation with the goy and the teeth and the dentist with the teeth.
Yeah.
And then he goes to see his attorney after he saw Nachner, and he's like, "Did he tell you the goy story with the teeth?" Like, he just knew that was horse shit.
Yes.
Like, the whole time.
Right.
It's like, what? There's some other great quotes from that scene, and the humor, the dialogue is just
it's booming.
Masterful. The acting is unbelievable.
Right.
And just to, like, other, like, peripheral things about, like, not the character study, which obviously this is about. Also, the way this movie is shot is, like, the most unassuming out of all 3 movies.
Yeah.
Where it's, like, really... This is the only one where you could, if you were focused, even though it's shot beautifully, if you were focused on just the audio, you could literally listen to this film.
Yeah.
Other than the Yiddish scenes at the beginning and some of the other ones toward the end.
I agree.
And gather almost everything that you could.
Yeah.
Non-visually or visually, or you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Which makes this movie a masterpiece in that right too, because it's so tight in that sense.
Yeah, and that it could have its hands tied behind its back visually, and you can still experience it.
Yeah, really it's like if you had a boxer go against another boxer and his hand was tied behind his back, and the boxer with his hand tied behind his back won the fight.
Exactly. But this movie does still feel cinematic. It has enough moments when, when Larry needs those reprieves, and that song, it plays a few times, it's like very operatic, and it's like, I don't know what it is, but it's something in
I think it's mostly Yiddish music. I'm pretty sure it's all, I think so.
Gotcha.
I don't know if that's the right, is that the right
I think Yiddish
linguistic term for the language?
I think so, yeah.
I don't know enough about it, but
But yeah, it is.
Even
so
when
tight.
Sai is about to die in the car crash, there's a song that's playing, and I think it's the same.
It is that same song, and that's cinematic. It has cinematic cutting, which makes it work.
But there's
on
also
that level.
humor in that, as he's
Yeah.
yelling at Clive, who he's riding the bicycle.
Right. Oh, I think one of the funniest parts of the movie is when the daughter, who basically has no lines other than yelling at Uncle Arthur.
She was the only one
like,
that I wrote daughter for her name.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's Sarah.
Sarah.
Yeah, Sarah.
And she's like, "Oh, Cy Woman died in a car crash," and it's just treated so.
So, all right, I had points on her. Okay, so she and Danny. Mm-hmm. It is Danny, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All Danny cares about is F Troop.
Yeah.
And his $20.
Right. Yeah.
Or just buying weed and smoking it.
Yeah, and hopefully
and not getting
his
beat
ass
up by
kicked.
Fagel.
Right.
So dodging the guy he owes drug money to.
Right.
And watching TV.
And getting his iPod, not his iPod, but his radio back too. That's
sure. I mean, that's like not even as it got taken, but
there's not a mission to get it back.
Ultimately, though, if he could find another way to get some money, which there's a whole subplot as to how the money's being stolen in this family.
Right.
And everybody in the family is blaming everybody else for stealing the $20. Even,
which is Larry's money at the end of the day.
Even in the attorney's office, Larry goes as far as to say, "Oh, she wiped our bank account as they're getting divorced," and then he goes, "And I think she's been stealing money out of my wallet."
Right,
but it was the
Sarah.
But it was the kids. But you don't know if it was Sarah and.
And Danny
stole it from Sarah.
Right.
Yes. Everybody's in this family just stealing money from each other.
And Larry's constantly asking what's going on.
Again, he has no idea. And then also, Cy is dead, but Larry's wife, who is hooking up with Cy, wants Larry to pay for Cy's funeral.
Right, and Larry does it.
Yeah. He also pays all the attorney fees for... So this guy just gets shit on.
And also, Cy is the one who's writing the letters to the
Cy is writing
the tenure committee at the college,
who Larry thought was Clive, and then Clive doesn't speak good English, and his father also speaks broken English,
right?
And those are the two that are like kind of against him,
yeah.
Or at least like he assumes that they might have a vendetta against him,
right? So Larry is paying for the funeral of the guy who not only was cucking him with his wife, but also trying to actively work against him.
At the funeral, he's sitting next to his wife. Or no, it's at Danny's bar mitzvah. He's sitting next to his wife, and she says to him, "Cy has had so much respect for you.
Right.
He even wrote letters to the tenure committee."
Yeah.
And you know via other scenes that the letters were written in Cy's manner of speaking.
Of course they were. Yeah.
And they were all just shitting on him as I don't even know what they were, but they were just like
defamatory,
denigrating, defamatory things that would keep him from getting tenure. Yeah. So even though Cy was working on the wife, but he was also working on Larry's career at the same time, while condescending to him to his face, bringing over a bottle of wine. "This is a wine, Larry. This is a Bordeaux."
Yeah.
But Larry's such a pussy. He should have just like immediately been like, "Get the fuck out of my house."
Exactly.
Actually, I'm gonna leave my house. You can stay here. Fuck you. I'm walking off. I'll figure this shit out later.
Right.
He just eats it. Like not even in a respectful way though. Like I can't get.
Oh, behind Larry as a character, no, I'm not like pulling for Larry. Out of all these characters, Lewin is the one who I'm like I respect him the most.
I like Lewin. Yeah.
But Larry, A Serious Man as a movie though, I still just. It's great. And the comedy of if the movie wasn't as funny as it is, I would be very upset, I think, because the levity of it, it's the thing that keeps you actually going. It's not like I believe in Larry as a character. I do think
even as shitty as Cy is, all of his scenes are some of the funniest scenes in the entire movie.
Oh yeah, they're hammers. I agree. What else? I don't even know if we've really talked about. We talked about like the.
You want to talk about A Serious Man more?
I don't know what else to say about it. I mean, there's just I could break down every scene and talk about why each thing is funny. But
I got into my Schrodinger's thing, and then the Abelman, whatever we just talked about.
Yeah, like the Goy's teeth is terrific.
Yeah, I mean that's a whole story.
Oh yeah, thank you. Yeah, like the Goy's teeth, but also just the rabbi. I think like it's another one of those Coen things where like there are people like in Think. They're talking about the seriousness of the wrestling picture, but also how much it doesn't matter. Same thing with this, where like the Goy's teeth or just like God's intervention. There's like the secular, or I guess non-secular, the like religious view of Larry's problems of like, you know, what he's going through the conversations with the rabbis, but then also his lawyer is totally just undermining and trivializing all the shit that the rabbis are saying.
Actually,
so Larry has no real guidance at all in the movie. He actually
honestly, I think the lawyer is the most has the only voice of reason in the entire film. Mm-hmm. He's almost my favorite character because he's the only one that's not a piece of shit.
Yes, who actually wants to help Larry. Yeah.
He's a good attorney. He refers him to other good attorneys. Granted, the guy at the end, Larry, gets the $3,000 bill, but that's business is business. I'm sorry, Larry's got to deal with that.
Yeah,
that
and
guy
also Larry didn't
wrong.
Have to pay for the funeral, and he didn't have to put up with the Poplar lawsuit or the Yard lawsuit.
How did he not end up having to pay for the? Oh yeah,
I'm saying Larry could have avoided the having to pay that many bills.
Yeah,
because he could have not had to sue the neighbor. He could have just gone to the neighbor's house. And I know it's hard stuff, but like still by the laws of movie characters, it's like Larry should go to the neighbor's house and be like, "Hey," or just not sue the neighbor.
By the laws of life, just man up and be like, "No, dude, you're not building the shed here."
Right, exactly.
Plant a fucking tree there or something. Like build a fence. Like
right.
What
Deal
are you
with
doing,
it without
dude?
having to spend money. Same story with Cy. Don't pay for his fucking funeral. With Clive,
just.
Yeah, things that you just wouldn't pay. The only thing Larry really should have paid for. Also, Arthur, his brother. He shouldn't have paid for his brother's fines or whatever he got screwed over for with like the law. Like,
no, he should have kicked them out.
Right. So Larry could have
at least mitigated some of his issues.
If he were a serious man, he would have taken care of those problems without stacking up.
Is that why this is a serious man?
Yeah,
it's in red.
I guess.
Is it just a man?
He's just a man,
yeah.
Right?
I guess so.
He could have. Yeah, he could have. If he really got his shit together the way I think he wanted to, he wouldn't have had to.
Did he want to though?
Any of this? Just
like Llewyn Davis, like, did he really want to? Or was he just...
What's Larry getting out of it? He's just being humiliated the whole movie.
I mean, does that play in... Alright, so... What in the first scene has to do anything with the movie, other than Schrodinger's paradox? Because, again, if you go back to, is he dead, is he not dead, who can decide? Only whoever... God.
Yeah.
At that point. Because all we have the husband and the wife.
Right.
And the control device.
Right.
That's Schrodinger's paradox again.
Yeah, I agree with that.
You have the husband is him being real. The wife is him being a demon, a Dybbuk.
Yeah.
And he's the control as he could be 50-50. And we never got to open that door.
Right.
So we don't know.
So what about it?
So
I agree with that.
So he's both alive and dead. Or he's both a demon and not a demon.
Right.
Which I never noticed before. So I guess I'm trying to bring it back to what the movie's about. Is that the only parallel between that intro scene and the rest of the movie?
I think it's...
Because I always maybe thought that their family was cursed because of that whole situation.
I think that's a very quick...
Or do you think it was just a completely different fable?
I think it's there just to set up the theme of the movie, which is basically...
I think so now.
Uncertainty of your life, basically.
Yeah.
But it's a very quick I mean, to your point about Schrodinger's paradox, it's a more fleshed out version of that with more interesting.
Do you see where I was going with Schrodinger's paradox and all the character involvements?
Yes,
that's what I noticed this time, which I never noticed before. I thought the Schrodinger's paradox thing was just a way for Clive and Larry to get into an argument and make me laugh,
right?
You know, but I never realized how that worked into the writing of the entire film.
Right.
And then I started going, holy shit, Schrodinger's paradox, that has to do with the couple at the beginning and the Dybbuk. And then I started looking at all the character interactions, and maybe I need to keep going deeper into that. But I think that's what's going on there.
I agree.
I think the whole movie is structured off of that.
I think, again, the Coens are so good at using the content of their movies and like things that feel really small or feel just like, oh, this is just part of the story.
Insular.
Using insular things like that that apply to the overall structure of the movie, or just the themes which a lot of most filmmakers worth their weight are like, they use those elements, but the Coens use them so tightly, and like the fact that Llewyn Davis feels like the movie could be a folk song. And the fact that Schrodinger's paradox feels like it could be applied to every scene in a
but
series.
But it's so tightly put together as a film, it makes you forget that that's a theme.
Exactly.
And you're watching something else, which
Right.
is what I did for the entirety of that movie.
Right.
Or I'm sorry, my entire viewing experience.
20 seconds? Okay. I feel like...
My entire viewing experience up until analyzing it and seeing it from that point of view.
Yeah.
That's all.
That's why you don't have to watch... You can watch these movies once. And I guess if you're like a casual viewer, I still feel like even the casual viewer has to know that any of these movies, there's more than just what's going on.
All right, welcome back. Final segment. We're going to get into the endings of these 3 movies and then talk about some other stuff and wrap up. Shit, I already forgot. What was the point that you specifically wanted me to bring up?
These are all just very ambiguously ended movies.
Yeah.
Like 3 of the best ambiguous endings of all time, I think.
Yeah.
I feel like the Coens are great with the ambiguous ending.
They are. We kind of touched on that earlier in terms of them being ambiguous and also the fact that they allow you to kind of write your own story at the end or create your own
meaning.
Create your own meaning.
Like what the whole thing was about.
Yeah. So they're really great at trusting the audience to... They just trust the audience. They don't spell everything out for you. They don't treat you like you're an idiot.
Right.
They let you think about what's going on and interpret it and allow you to watch it a second time. It's almost like rereading a book that you maybe didn't grasp the fullness of.
Yeah,
and they're so deep in that way.
It's not like the Shyamalan ending where it's like, I didn't understand a lot, or I understood it, but whoa, there's a completely new meaning. It's just, it adds to all the stuff you've already seen without being like, and here's what it was, here's what it was all about. Like, it doesn't deliver it to you like that.
So to the ending of the first movie we discussed.
Yeah.
Alright, so the ending of Barton Fink. And I did say earlier, to bring it back to Shyamalan, I literally wrote down as the
twist
ending thing happened, I wrote Shyamalan twist. It doesn't matter what I wrote. At the end of the day, I have a question. Why did they do that? To me, it didn't fit. I got the whole movie.
Yeah.
It was deep. I loved the character study. I didn't understand why they made it so surreal so quickly.
Yeah, yeah.
In the final act.
Yeah.
And that's my question to you as somebody who's seen this movie a lot of times. What's your take on why they made Goodman and made it very clear now there was a question the whole time as to whether or not there was some maybe supernatural stuff going on, and then they just put it right in your face, like in the final act.
Yeah, well, I didn't realize until just now what I think it means, but I actually think I know what it means.
That's why I wanted to catch you off guard, and I didn't tell you what I was going to ask.
Yeah, I think
Why did they do that?
So, okay, he has a couple... I mentioned muses with these movies, Lewin and Fink specifically, earlier.
So Barton Fink in this one.
With Fink, okay, so he has 3 muses that I can think of in this movie. Charlie, a.k.a. John Goodman, for the wrestling movie. Kind of the head of Judy Davis's character, Audrey, I think is her name.
Why do you think that?
Because once he gets the head, that's when
well, it's a mystery as to what's in the box, but
sure, but come on, I mean, yeah.
Well, to be honest, seeing this movie after seeing 7, I was annoyed immediately because 7 ruined this movie for me because I already saw 7.
Right.
I knew it was in the box.
Sure.
And this was before the detectives even introduced the fact that Charlie was a...
Yeah, but this movie came out 7 years earlier, so...
Yeah, well, that's my fault for not watching it. I also didn't watch Shawshank until I thought it was stupid too. So and I'm not saying I think this movie is stupid.
So,
I just...
For the sake of my
sequence
point,
at the end.
For the sake of my point, let's remove the head, no pun intended, from the argument.
Sorry to go off on that.
No, it's okay. So, sorry to go off with the head. But, how droll. But, no, okay, let's say he has 2 muses. Because the head thing, you can take that in a different way.
No, that's a valid point. I went off on it.
But to me, he has 2 or 3 muses. I think you could argue the head is, I'm going to remove that from this portion of the conversation. I'm going to remove the head from this portion of the conversation.
Oh my god.
So Charlie is a muse, and then the picture of the lady is a muse.
Yeah.
Right?
The lady on the beach and the photo and the...
So Charlie, for all intents and purposes, dies at the end of the movie because he goes into his room while the building's on fire, and he's like, I'm just going to sit here for a while. I don't think Barton's going to see Charlie again. I don't take it that way. So I take it as Charlie.
Okay.
Charlie is a muse. He dies. Barton ends up in writing purgatory because now he's having to write all
beholden
this
to
horrible
Lipnick.
shit. Exactly.
Yeah.
So I take that as he's, he has to fulfill his contract.
Not even though Lipnick tells him he's never going to work again, even though Lipnick contradicts everything he says. So I guess maybe on that point you would assume that Barton's going to work for Lipnick again. Lipnick leaves it.
He's never like, you're never going to work in this town again, kid. It's not quite that cut and dry. It's
but he tells him he'll never create anything ever again, and he's just maybe we're on the same page. I guess. Okay.
I think
minus a couple of nuances to that conversation.
Yeah,
okay,
but for all intents and purposes, he's in writing purgatory on a literal level for maybe the next couple of years because he's under contract. Which a lot of these old Hollywood studio contracts, they basically were like that. Like, you couldn't write anything that wasn't for the studio. But the situation Barton's in now is he also can't write anything he writes belongs to the studio, and the studio is not going to make anything he writes. So he's in writing purgatory in the sense that he can't be creative. But the reason I give this movie an optimistic stamp is because at the end, I take that as his muse, his other muse that he's had throughout the whole movie is very much alive and well, and I take this as like, once he's out of that writing purgatory, it's still going to be there. Like, his fire to write is still going to be there. That's how I take the ending.
I think he's still, based on everything you just said, he's still in purgatory, and John Goodman's going to come visit him. He does start to walk out of the hotel, though.
Yeah, he leaves the hotel. And it burns down.
He does. Oh, do they show the hotel burning down, or do they just show the hallways burning?
But it's on fire. I take that as it's burning down.
But Goodman says he's going to stay there.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess we have to talk about I am the
life of the mind.
The life of the mind. I am 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 the life of the mind.
Yeah.
I am the life of the mind.
Walter, you're not the life of the mind. But yeah, what about it?
I don't know. What do you think about it? This is my first watch, so I
think
haven't really
that's
been
your
able to...
opinion, man. The hotel.
I told you I was going to ask you questions about the end of this movie.
That's my take on it. Is that part of? I do think. Okay. I think this movie is not literal, but I think it's literal. And fuck, what am I trying to say here?
Well, I think figuratively, based on the situation that he's in with Lipnick,
yeah,
that he's still stuck in the hotel, even though he looks like he's leaving, and the hotel's burning down, and John Goodman's going back to his room. Where is he going? He's just walking down the hall. He didn't walk to the elevator, did he? Isn't the elevator?
He walks toward the
elevator. Okay.
I take it as
right.
he doesn't go back to the hotel, and
so he's like, I'm out.
He's just kind of wandering around.
So
he's gonna stay in L.A., but
so you're optimistic. Well, does he have to stay in L.A. contractually because of Lipnick? Is that what's going on?
I don't know, but I always assumed he had. Well, yeah, Lipnick says, "I want you in town and out of my sight."
Yeah.
So I take it as he's going to stay in L.A.
So would Goodman just walk to another hotel and follow him and be that, keep him in purgatory?
Maybe. But I still think the fact that the movie ends with him looking at a living, corporeal version of
the woman in the
woman in the picture. So I take that as like the drive to still strive for something greater is still on the horizon. That's how I take it. Even though it's a very negative ending, I think it's optimistic. Or that's a silver lining in the shitstorm that he just experienced.
How do you feel, to wrap up that end of that movie, about Barton as a character?
Well, I still think he's full of shit. I still think...
Because before we talked about the ending, we did kind of discuss how he was pretentious, full of shit.
Yeah, and I do think his big idea... his big idea...
And that was a good point that you made, that his one big idea was... his play, and he rewrote that.
Right, but maybe the fact that his muse is alive means he's going to take all the shit he just went through and write a script about that.
I think you're very optimistic.
Of course, Lipnick is probably going to read that and be like, what is this? You wrote a script called Barton Fink, and maybe it's the... You know what I mean? Like, the movie is a script that you wrote, like...
Well, that was one of the first things I said about the movie. It's written like a play.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, it's kind of cyclical in that way, in the way that Llewyn Davis is, and ambiguous in its ending.
Yeah. So, I mean, what do you take out of the ending?
I think that's it. I mean, I don't have a solid I think what I took out of the ending is I need to rewatch this movie.
Yes.
But
that's how I felt.
But I'm trying to play devil's advocate and
poke holes. I get it.
Ask what you think about it because I've only seen it once, and
Yeah.
I think the things that you said have made me. I didn't even know how to discuss the end of that movie.
I know what you mean.
And now I know how to now I know how to go into that movie again.
Sure. Yeah.
And have some idea as to what the hell happened at the end of that movie. Because I was very confused. Like I said at the beginning of this small discussion in this segment, that I got what was going on, and then that last act, I just was like, why? And that was my question to you. Yeah. Why did they do that?
Right.
And I think you answered that question for me. Yeah. So now I get to watch it and understand that perspective, and you helped me form a new perspective in that conversation.
Thanks, man. I mean, no, I think
thank you.
But no, again, I feel like I'm Barton Fink talking about it, because it's like, I knew the first time I watched it, I don't know what I'm feeling, but I know it's special, and I know that there's more to just what I just saw.
Like I said, with There Will Be Blood.
Yeah, exactly. Right. It might not be as simple as, God, I can't help it. Quote Lebowski, but
please, it's the best movie ever.
But yeah, I think there's more to it. So I mean, there's clearly more to it. But yeah, that's my take on it.
All right, cool. All right, next one, ending of
Davis.
Llewyn Davis.
I feel like we kind of did.
Yeah, we kind of covered that one. All right, we could skip that one.
Did you get enough out for your thoughts on the ending?
Pretty much. I mean, I kind of didn't know how to discuss that movie either, and I think our conversation really helped me figure out what I wanted to talk about with it. So that was it. We covered it.
So you take. Well, I don't know.
Do you want to wrap it up right now with anything else you thought about the movie, other than we're going to talk about funny shit?
No,
at some point.
I want to poke your brain, or I want to pick your brain a little.
Please, ask questions. I'd love to.
Like, what do you get out of the ending of Llewyn?
What did I get out of the ending of Llewyn Davis?
Yeah.
I brought it up earlier. I think at the end he sings with more passion, and it left me feeling the most optimistic out of the movies. Yeah. Also, he went through the things with his father. Right. He sung the song to his father that he knew that his dad always loved.
Yes, that his sister had the record of.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then the dad at the end of the song, toward the end of the song, Llewyn realizes, he goes, wow. And you think that his father was moved, maybe.
Right.
But he was moved in a different way.
Yes.
His bowels moved.
Right.
So he says, wow, a second time, because he's actually smelling the level of shit in the room.
Yes.
And so that was just a downer. I think what I took away from that movie was how brilliantly it was crafted, because you had so many highs and so many lows, and they were so... It was written the way... I think I said this earlier. It was... or maybe all three of these movies, but this one was set up, punchline.
Yes.
But it set you up in an emotional way.
Yeah.
And then the punchline was hilarious. Right. So you had all of these emotional, horrible things going on, and then almost every scene ends with a joke that kind of leaves you feeling good about what just... Or not even good about what just happened, but you're like, that was fucked up, but that was also hilarious, the way that they were able to bring this situation to you and make it funny. Yeah. That's what I gained from that movie. It was more of kind of like a stand-up routine. Yeah. And I hate to say that because it's so serious as a character development, the character study, character development. It's beautiful. The music is beautiful. It's very sentimental. I told you, I watched it last night, and I've seen it a bunch of times, and that intro, the second scene, I was kind of tearing up, welling up, just emotionally affected. Mm-hmm. But you have also the scene. Okay, can we get into? I want to get into funny stuff, but we got to do a serious man.
Let's do a serious man really quick.
I had a good segue for that, but I guess we can come back to it.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's what I took away from that movie. At the end of the day, I just thought it was a series of emotional setups and perfectly timed juxtaposition that made you laugh your ass off. Yeah. Or even just be just kind of feel it tapped into such a broad range of emotions in each scene. And that's what I took away from it. And that's what I loved about that movie.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. That's what I got.
So then, okay, for a serious man, I I've never read anybody else thinking about this, but my take on the ending. Actually,
That's
what's
a
your
tough
take?
one.
I want to hear
That's
your
a
take.
tough one.
Well, okay, I'll tell you my take then. So my take.
Then you go back to Schrodinger's
What's
box.
that?
Cat box.
No, Adriana's heard my take. So you know the Goy's teeth.
Yeah.
So like I take the ending. I know I'm wrong. I know I'm wrong. But the
What?
ending
Don't say
I
that.
want,
This could be
the ending I want to believe really happened is okay. He gets the call from the doctor.
Yeah.
And the doctor, you're assuming, is calling with bad news, right?
Yeah, like you have cancer.
Right.
Also, they didn't even say like that he had X-rays. He was at the doctor in the first scene of the movie,
Yeah.
and they only show it for a snippet because they go to Danny on some other bullshit.
Right. They show him
but-
X-rays, don't they? He's laying down on a table. I
He's
think.
laying down on the table, but the doctor's pressing down again to the Coen's like sound quality.
Yeah.
He's like pressing down on his belly and stuff, and his stomach goes like a little gurgle.
Right.
I don't think they show the X-rays.
Oh, okay. Well, either way.
And then in the same scene, Danny is like
he's in his classroom getting
with the earbuds. Yeah.
But I think that remember the Goy's teeth story? How insane that is. Now there's the help me save me.
Yeah.
And I think that the doctor found something in Larry's body that was something like that. Like
That's such a stretch.
See, I knew that's why I know I'm
not saying you're wrong.
but-
I'm not saying you're wrong, but you have to almost like that's such a stretch. You got to prove that point.
I know. Well, I don't really have anything to prove other than the movie has the Goy's teeth scene, and that's such an. I know that scene can act as a red herring for like there really is no meaning, and even like you don't have guidance from the church.
Yeah, I think it just has to do
But-
with how much full of shit the rabbis
The
are.
rabbi
But you
is.
think it was such a
But the
significant...
movie dedicates like 5 minutes to that, and
So
it's
detailed.
and
It's a
so-
great scene. It is
Right.
an incredible
and it's
scene.
the most interesting scene in the movie because it leaves you with so many questions and like.
But Larry has so many questions, and he's like, so what happened?
Mm-hmm.
With, who's the dentist? What's his name? Do you remember?
Sussman, Dr. Sussman.
Sussman, yeah. So what happened to Sussman?
Mm-hmm.
He went back to his normal daily routine after he checked all
Right.
the teeth for a while, went back to his normal
Right.
routine. And then, so he's like, okay, so what happened to the Goy?
Who cares?
Who? Does that matter? Like,
Right.
You know?
And really,
He's like, what the
the
fuck?
thesis of his whole thing is helping people or being nice. Good nerd. Right? Like, thanks.
So you're saying that theoretically, at least optimistically, as you want to see this movie.
yeah.
I don't think it is.
I don't think so. I'm sure Danny dies and Larry has cancer and it gets worse.
Danny dies in the tornado and Larry gets cancer.
Right. I mean, probably. But
What do you think happens to Arthur? God damn, he probably suffers the worst fate of anybody. He goes to prison.
Yeah, exactly. Goes to prison because of his,
Sodomy
his
situation,
sodomy,
which
right.
came out of left field. You thought he was going to get arrested for gambling.
Right. So I think the ending, I take that out of it, which I don't like take that out. That's the
No.
ending I want to happen.
Okay, that's the ending you
off-screen.
want to happen.
But the ending that I think happens, is that like things get much worse for Larry, and he doesn't. He hadn't considered like say things. He has cancer. I'm thinking I'm Larry. Now I have cancer. My son just died. Wow, maybe things weren't so bad beforehand when all this other bad shit was happening. You know what I mean?
Because
Like-
a lot of it was like normal life stuff.
yeah, and things that he could have handled. Where now this big thing that he can't handle is there, and now he truly is fucked.
And maybe if he had handled the other shit, he would have figured out how to get through adversity before he got to...
Yes.
That's a good...
So that's the real ending that I think, my real takeaway. But what I want to be my takeaway that I just wanted to talk about was that maybe he had like some, Hebrew carving in his bones or something. I don't know, but
Like he wraps up the Sussman story.
in some way, which I know again, whatever. So what do you think?
Honestly, to be perfectly honest, I've only taken that movie at surface value for the most part and the humor out of it.
Really?
Yeah, like the most I have gathered the depth of it, and
How did you see that? Oh, shh.
It's a June bug.
Oh, okay. Dude, how did you see it?
See
It was
what-
like it was behind you, and it flew, and you
It
saw
you
landed
could hear it. It was going. brrrr.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, so you took the humor out, which is that's part of why
Honestly,
that movie works.
Other than what's it? If he wants to eat it, it's okay. So, Serious Man and Llewyn Davis I only pretty much took its surface value after multiple watches of both movies. Because we're doing this, I'm watching things more analytically.
Yeah.
Now, taking them at surface value doesn't mean that I haven't
Yeah.
delved into, like... But I've looked more at the humor, which we haven't gotten into yet. I viewed... And can we segue now?
Yeah.
I viewed all three of these movies as comedies.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Which we haven't really talked about how funny they are, really. So, I mean, I think they're hilarious. They're all three are black comedies.
Oh, yeah.
In our discussion as it relates to just what we're talking about now, I think we're just getting into like character development and all the
let's talk about best.
all the serious stuff about these movies, but we haven't really talked about how funny they are. We brought it up here and there, but I mean, that's the angle that I've looked at these movies from.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree.
And somewhat with Barton Fink, but in relation to this conversation, as this was the first time that I saw that movie, I kind of looked at it through a different lens. Maybe if I had seen it before, even recently in its entirety, and wasn't really trying to dig deep into it, I would just think it was hilarious because there's a lot of funny stuff in Barton Fink,
right?
Which I did notice too.
Right.
So yeah.
Well, so then let's.
That's my takeaway from
all of these.
All three, really. Yeah.
Okay, so then bests. Let's wrap it up with like bests. I don't even want to talk about worsts. Can we just talk about our best shit? Like, you have critiques?
I don't think there's much that we can critique, other than what we've already discussed. A couple things that didn't make sense.
Yeah,
exactly.
Should we talk about similarities, do you think?
Let's talk about the funniest aspects of these movies.
Okay.
As we've worked into that.
Yeah.
And I think we keep drawing similarities between the movies, so I think we kind of have already
the only
covered that for the most part.
Do you mind if I real fast?
No.
You might cut this out.
Whatever.
This is not similarities. It's not big, but
no, we can.
I love
do that.
These movies all, and not just these movies. The Coens, in so many movies, have the most memorable secretary characters.
Yeah.
Can
you want to quiz me on them, or do you want to go off with one, or
no? I mean, just these movies all have good. Like,
do you want to talk about every secretary in every movie?
No, but they basically all have them, and you can even argue Brad in The Big Lebowski is one of those.
Yes, 100%. Okay, I have one. I have one.
Yeah.
All right, so the principal secretary at the beginning of The Serious Man, the way she... All right, first, you kind of don't even have an idea of anything about her. You know what's going on with Danny, the principal, and she walks in and she's carrying like the dish,
right,
like a teacup, and it's going like she's shaky. It's going,
yeah.
And then she walks up and she has the most like important waddle you've ever seen in your entire life.
Yeah.
As she waddles up to the desk and waddles back, and then she's gone. That's it. Yeah. What is the most funny scene in Think?
I think the funniest, where it's just like this is ridiculous, is when he's looking at the dailies of Devil on the Canvas.
Yeah.
And it's the big guy being like, I will destroy him! And it's just like showing that clip.
Dude, I wrote that. I had so many quotes that I wrote down. I will destroy him was one of them.
Yeah. Everything else to me is like, in my head funny, but that part makes me really laugh.
As you've seen this movie a bunch of times, do you remember the scene where somebody's going off on the phone to somebody else, and they go, who is this? Do you remember that? It was just like the Seinfeld scene where...
Yeah. It's Barton going off to Garland, his agent, being like...
And Garland says,
I think I've written
this?
something big, and he's like, it's Barton. No, sorry, it's not Garland, it's Audrey. It's Audrey. He's like, hey Audrey, it's me. I can't... And he's like, laying out all his problems. She's like, who is this? Just like, and then he...
So that reminded me of...
when
George going off the rails,
yeah,
and Jerry clearly knows who it is.
Right, he's like, who is
this? Yeah, I wrote that down as a quote. I thought that was really funny.
That is great.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. You said, what does he say? I will destroy you.
I will destroy you.
And that's so funny because it plays to how trivial the dialogue is, and Barton's trying to create a masterpiece.
Yes.
And it's literally just a couple of guys smashing each other's faces into the mat.
Yes.
And they have to create the most bogus bullshit backstory to make these people interesting.
Right. I think the other quick laugh I had in Fink is Lipnick, and I'm sure you noticed this, when Lipnick's final scene, Barton goes into his office, and Lipnick says very self-importantly that he's enrolled in the in the Army Reserve.
Oh,
he's
yeah,
wearing like a corporal outfit, and he says they didn't have uniforms.
So he had one made.
So we had the wardrobe department at the studio make him out. It's just such a quick little.
Dude, that was hilarious. That was
plays
awesome.
to his vanity. Like,
yeah.
I love that.
That was good. I love that too. That's a really good point. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, it's funny.
And then Serious Man, like, what's the funniest scene in Serious Man? That's tough. That's so subtle. And I wanted to say, should we talk about Cy Abelman?
I think so.
Is it so cringy that it's just not funny though, or is
no,
it just
dude? I think A Serious Man is the funniest one of
because
these
he's
three.
so cringy. You thought A Serious Man was the funniest of the three movies?
Yeah, in terms of like laugh out loud funniness, I think it's not like jokey clearly,
no,
but
it's
so damn funny to me.
It's so subtle. Like, Larry, I really think the Jolly Roger is the best course of action.
Yeah, I think,
and that just wrapped up the whole thing about him just shitting on Larry, and you're like, and Larry just goes with it.
Right.
Again, I'm mad about it, but
I think Cy is
hilarious.
Just so disgusting and transparent in his goal that like.
What about the fact that every time anybody brings up Cy, they go, Cy Abelman?
Yeah.
They're just shocked by the fact that this woman would be attracted to this dude.
Cy Abelman.
Like, they almost, and they feel bad for Larry because she's cheating on him with that dude.
Right. Which makes them automatically look at Larry less, right? Like,
which
it's just
he's brought on himself again, but
yeah. But they have to be socially polite and be like, Cy Abelman.
You know what's
all right? Well, are you gonna try to figure it out? Like the lawyer is like,
he's just like, I can only do so much. I
empathize.
can't like butt into your personal life. I deal with your legal
but like, why
matters.
are you dealing with this? Sorry, what were you gonna say?
No, and there's one really kind of funny racist thing that happens, and it's not even funny because it's racist. It's funny because it's making fun of the racist being racist. It's when Clive's father comes up to Larry, and his neighbor is already racist again. He's like anti-Semitic. Mm-hmm. You get the vibe that he's
Right.
You really get the vibe through Larry's dreams that he's anti-Semitic because he literally shoots his brother and tries to hunt him.
Right.
But before that even happens, he's at odds with his neighbor, and you can tell his neighbor's probably kind of culturally not feeling the Jewish guy in his neighborhood, right?
Right.
And but Larry gets confronted by the Korean dude.
Yeah.
And the white guy comes up and he's like, "Is this man bothering you?"
Right.
And he's like, it's like, and Larry just looks at him like, "Are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah.
You're gonna like." And he's just like, "No."
Right.
And the guy walks off and he's like staring back.
See him
I thought that was hilarious.
You see him in the background, like out of focus,
and he's still like staring back at the Asian guy. He's like so racist
he's more anti-Japanese than he is
exactly
Jewish, I guess.
Yeah.
Or anti.
I thought the way that they put that together was hilarious.
What was that line where Clive is in Larry's office?
Misa Misa?
No.
Oh, secret test. Hush, hush.
No. There was something else I was dying laughing at.
What about passing grade?
Go.
What about a passing grade? Or shoot.
They have two dialogues in the office.
Yeah.
There's one where he says, he brings out the envelope and he's like, "This is a thing." And Clive goes, "Yes, that is a thing."
Right.
And he's just like, he won't acknowledge that.
And this is here, isn't it? Yes, that is there.
That is there. Yeah.
Wasn't it the secret test line that had you laughing really hard?
The secret test?
When he's like, I'll take a secret test. We'll keep it hush hush.
No, I think it was like he was saying like this is okay to do or something. Or I don't know. There was something. I have to look. I don't know. Forget it.
I wish we had the quotes. Like I really like
every Clive line is pretty gold.
Clive's good. Yeah,
just his audacity. And
I will say it's like in the way that Barton Fink is like quippy and like written.
Yeah.
A Serious Man, and maybe this is just them evolving as writers and knowing how to deal with actors and casting properly. Maybe not that, because the casting's great in all the movies. But in A Serious Man, it doesn't feel written or too like on top of itself. The conversations feel very natural, even though they're quippy.
Yes,
they feel very natural. And Clive is a testament to that. Yeah.
I totally
so I don't know what he said, but I'm glad you brought up that point because
Yeah.
the two conversations that they have in Larry's office are like really
Yeah.
good and hilarious.
Yeah.
And hilarious, and that's one of the fun. Those are some of the funniest scenes in that movie too.
Yeah, rock solid.
One other thing is his brother Arthur. Out in a minute.
Right, yeah, all right there.
There's so many. We could just keep going. We could go forever
Literally-
with how funny
The tenor conversation.
all of the movies are.
Tenure.
Tenure, yes, the
That
guy
is
coming,
hilarious.
was it Aldrich? Is that the guy, the character's name? How he's
Arlen.
like, or Arlen, yeah, he's
Yeah.
so concerned about like Larry's feelings, but he's willing to also tell him about the like defamatory letters, and he's like, yeah, I just felt I should tell you about it. It's nothing to worry about, but
No, yeah.
but then he'll go on in a
This
way
won't
that
work against you in the eyes of the committee.
right, right.
But I
They-
just wanted to let you know there's some really
somebody really hates
defamatory
you.
remarks coming against your character.
Yes, and the way he,
And Larry's just like, this isn't working against me. How? You're on
Right.
the committee.
Right.
And you're telling me this. Obviously,
Right.
you're having this discussion.
right, and even the guy's like his body language when he walks away, he like sulks away. It's just like every element is so carefully
Mhm.
cared for, but it's not like in a Wes Anderson way where it feels totally. Which I love Wes Anderson, but like it doesn't feel as like
A
really
stage piece.
constructed.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
And I think part of that is just like set decoration and stuff like that. But like the actors, the dialogue, the way it fits with each other is so on point, and the character detail is so on point.
All right.
that-
I think we
yeah.
just that sums up a lot of Coen Brothers movies. And I
Yeah.
think that's a good way to wrap
Yeah.
this one up because we hit on this is a podcast about our favorite movies. And I hadn't seen Barton Fink. You hadn't seen Llewyn Davis. We
Yeah.
did this on purpose so we could challenge each other. We're doing this on purpose to challenge each other to watch movies we
Yeah.
haven't seen, but we also want to talk about our favorite movies.
Totally.
And this was perfect because, I mean, the Coens are an American treasure, and I think
World
top
treasure,
maybe
but-
3 movies for me. I don't know how to rank movies, but I really think that No Country for Old Men is like just the top tier.
Yeah.
Nothing is better than it.
Yeah, it's definitely it's the standard. I
And
agree.
there's so many Coen movies. Well, I mean, I haven't seen them all, so I'm not as well versed as Matt. But I mean,
you know your shit though.
we enjoyed watching these movies, and hope that everybody watching a podcast like this watches these types of movies because they're great.
Yeah,
They're so important.
they are.
Yeah. So
Yeah, they'll
that's
be-
all I have for a wrap up.
Yeah, I don't have anything. I think they'll be remembered for forever. Hopefully by people like us, if not the larger society. Like these movies deserve. They're works of art that are as
Yeah.
important as any other work of art,
Yeah.
in my opinion. So
Yeah, I don't know if any of them are in the what's it called, the national. What do they do when they? Brokeback Mountain is in the
Museum of Modern Art.
No. There's like a national kind of artist registry or something.
Yeah.
There. I don't know.
I
forget
know.
what it's called.
I know what you're talking about.
We'll cut this out because I don't know what I'm talking about. But
Yeah.
I do think that
Same.
these are very important movies if you're into film. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I agree. Cool. That feels good to me.
All right. So we don't have a name for this yet, but once we do, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment.
Yeah, do all the YouTube stuff, or if you're listening to this, do whatever you got to do on that platform to listen to the next one.
Yeah, I heard we had to say that.
Great.
So love
Bye.
you.
Thanks. That was